the world awakens with a familiar rush, a symphony of hurried footsteps on pavement, the digital chime of notifications pulling your mind in 1,000 directions. Before you've even had your first sip of tea, there is the endless stream of thoughts about the day ahead, the meetings to attend, the deadlines to meet, the quiet, persistent hum of anxiety about the future, a subtle feeling of being swept along by a current you cannot see or control. Have you ever felt as though you are running in a race with no finish line? Have you ever paused, even for a moment, and wondered why your heart feels so heavy, even when, on the surface, everything seems to be all right? We live in an age of unprecedented material comfort, a world of instant connection and endless possibility. Yet this very world has quietly placed upon our shoulders an immense spiritual weight. We are constantly pushed to be better, to achieve more, to be happier, but we are rarely taught how to simply be with ourselves, especially when we are faced with the difficult, uncomfortable guests of the human experience. Guests like disappointment, sadness, or fear. The true source of our exhaustion, our deep sense of being stuck, often comes from this relentless clinging, this attachment to expectations, to carefully constructed images of an ideal life. We hold on tightly to the ghosts of the past. We anxiously rehearse for a future that has not yet arrived. And in doing so, we lose the profound peace of the only moment that is ever truly ours, the present. But what if there was another way, a path that does not demand that we run faster, but instead teaches us how to gracefully stop, a way that does not ask us to eliminate our feelings, but to understand and embrace them with compassion? This journey we are about to embark on is not a dry religious lecture. It is a shared exploration of a practical and profound wisdom, a path illuminated by ancient Zen teachings, to a way to find a stillness that exists within you, untouched by the chaos outside. This is the art of letting go, which is not an act of surrender or defeat, but the ultimate act of liberation. Our journey begins not with a demand for immediate change, but with a gentle invitation, an invitation to simply look, to observe with honesty and courage the fundamental nature of our shared human experience. In the language of the Buddha, this first step is called understanding Dukkha. The word is often translated into English as suffering, and this translation immediately conjures images of great tragedy, immense pain, and terrible misfortune. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far deeper, far more subtle, and profoundly more relevant to our everyday lives. To truly understand it, we must set aside the dramatic notion of suffering and instead think of dukkha as a pervasive, underlying sense of unsatisfactoriness, a friction, a fundamental unease. Imagine a magnificent horse-drawn carriage, but one of its wheels is just slightly off-center on a smooth road. The bumpiness is barely noticeable, a minor annoyance, but it is always there. On a rough road, the misalignment becomes jarring, shaking the entire carriage. Dukkha is like that misaligned wheel. It is the constant, subtle friction of being alive, a quality that runs through every aspect of our existence. To see this clearly, the ancient teachings guide us to look for dukkha in three distinct forms. The first is the most obvious, the one we all recognize instantly. It is called dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the raw, undeniable pain of body and mind. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes, the chronic ache in your back, the sharp sting of a wound. It is the grief that hollows out your chest when you lose someone you love, the anxiety that tightens its grip in the dead of night, the sting of harsh words, the bitterness of failure, the pain of rejection. This is the overt suffering that we spend so much of our energy trying to avoid, to fix, to numb. It is real, it is painful, and it is an unavoidable part of life as a sentient being. When the Buddha speaks of suffering, he is acknowledging this reality without flinching, validating the pain that we all experience in these raw and visceral ways. But if the teaching stopped here, it would be little more than a statement of the obvious, a confirmation of what we already know to be true, the wisdom of this first truth. However, lies in its invitation to go deeper. The second form of dukkha is more subtle, and it is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the unease that is woven into our happiest moments. It is the inherent fragility of all pleasant experiences. Think of a perfect, sun-drenched afternoon on a holiday, a moment of pure bliss. Even within that joy, there can be a tiny, almost imperceptible shadow, the quiet knowledge that this will end, that soon you must pack your bags and return to ordinary life. That shadow, that subtle anxiety born from the fleeting nature of happiness, is viparinama dukkha. It is the sadness that lingers after a beautiful song has finished, the melancholy that comes with the fading of a vibrant sunset. We chase after happiness. We achieve a goal we have strived for. We find ourselves in a loving relationship, and for a time, there is joy. But because we cling to these pleasant experiences, because we try to grasp onto something that is by its very nature flowing and impermanent, we create the conditions for our own future suffering. When the situation changes, as it inevitably must, our joy gives way to sorrow. The promotion we celebrated brings new pressures. The passionate love affair cools into a quiet routine. Our youth and vitality gradually give way to the realities of aging. The suffering here does not come from the experience itself, but from our resistance to its change, from our attachment to the way things were. Our happiness, because it is dependent on external conditions that are constantly in flux, contains within it the very seeds of its own demise. It is a beautiful, fragile bubble, and our desperate attempt to keep it from popping is a source of profound and constant tension. This leads us to the third and most profound form, sankhara dukkha. This is the most subtle, the background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is inherent in existence itself. It is the dukkha of conditioned reality. This is the misaligned wheel on a perfectly smooth road. It is a deep, existential unease that arises not from overt pain or the loss of pleasure, but from the simple fact that we are a temporary collection of constantly changing physical and mental components. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, our perceptions, our consciousness. These are the five aggregates, the sankharas, or conditioned things, that we call a self. But none of them are stable. None of them are truly solid. They are more like a process, a river, a flickering flame. Sankhara dukkha is the low-grade stress of having to maintain this fragile construction. You can feel it in moments of quiet boredom, that restless urge to reach for your phone, to seek a distraction, to fill the space. You can feel it after achieving a great ambition. When the initial thrill fades and you are left with a quiet sense of, is this all there is? It is the vague, persistent feeling that something is missing, that you are not quite whole, not quite settled. It is the stress of being subject to cause and effect, of being a vulnerable being in a world of constant change. This is the deepest truth of dukkha, that even in the absence of overt pain or loss, there is a fundamental friction in being alive, a quiet tension that we can never fully escape as long as we identify with this changing, conditioned self. The story of Kisa Gotami illustrates this journey of awakening with heartbreaking beauty. She was a young mother in the time of the Buddha, and her infant son had fallen ill and died, consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness. She refused to accept his death. Clutching his small, cold body, she went from house to house, desperately begging for medicine that could revive her child. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man, seeing her profound suffering, directed her to the Buddha. He told her, "This man has the medicine you seek." Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for help. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "There is only one thing I need to make the medicine. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Hope surged in Kisa Gotami's heart. A mustard seed was such a simple thing. Surely she could find one. She began her quest, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked, "Do you have a mustard seed for the Blessed One's medicine?" "Of course," the woman replied. "But before you take it," Kisa Gotami asked, remembering the Buddha's condition, "Has anyone in this house? A parent, a child, a spouse, ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our father just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had a mustard seed to offer, but every family had also known the bitter taste of loss. One had lost a mother, another, a brother, another, a beloved daughter. As the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat by the roadside, the truth of her search slowly dawning upon her. She had not found the magical seed she was looking for. Instead, she had found something far more profound, a mirror to her own sorrow in the heart of every person she met. She realized that her pain, which she thought was uniquely and unbearably hers, was in fact the shared, universal experience of all humanity. Death was not a cruel anomaly that had struck her family alone. It was a law of existence. In that moment of profound realization, her frantic clinging to her son's body began to soften. She understood. She took her child to the cremation ground, held him one last time, and let him go. She had not been cured of her grief, but she had been cured of the illusion that made her grief unbearable. Her story is our story. To acknowledge dukkha in all its forms is not to be pessimistic or morbid. It is to be a realist. It is the act of a brave patient telling the doctor exactly where it hurts, so that a true diagnosis can be made. To look squarely at the inevitability of pain, the fragility of happiness, and the underlying friction of existence is not an act of surrender. It is the first, most critical step toward freedom. It is the moment we stop running from the truth and instead turn to face it. With open eyes and a compassionate heart, by doing so, we do not invite more suffering into our lives. We simply stop pretending it isn't already here, and only then, once we have acknowledged the nature of our condition, can we begin to ask the next, all-important question. If this is the truth of our experience, where does it come from? What is its cause? This courage to look at the symptom now gives us the strength to search for the root, having looked with courage into the face of our shared human condition, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness we call dukkha. We are no longer in the dark. We have acknowledged the symptom. The work of a true spiritual detective now begins to trace this symptom back to its source, to uncover its root. This brings us to the second noble truth, the truth of the origin of suffering, known in the Pali language as samudaya. The Buddha, in his profound investigation of the human heart, discovered that our suffering does not arise from a punishing God, from random chance, or from the external world itself. It arises from within. Its single, powerful root is a force he called tanha. The word tanaha translates literally as thirst. It is a metaphor of stunning accuracy. Think of the desperate, all-consuming thirst you might feel on a scorching day. It is not a gentle preference for a drink. It is a driving, compulsive, agonizing need that eclipses all other thoughts. This is the nature of tanha. It is the insatiable thirst of the mind, the relentless craving and clinging that dictates so much of our inner life. It is the deep, restless seeking for something to hold on to, something to satisfy a fundamental lack we feel at our core. This thirst, this clinging, is the engine that turns the wheel of dukkha, and it manifests in three primary ways, moving from the obvious to the incredibly subtle. The first, and most easily recognizable, is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving that is tied to our six senses, the desire for beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, enticing smells, delicious tastes, comforting touches, and interesting thoughts or ideas. Our world is built upon stimulating this very thirst. Advertising exists to create and amplify kama tanha, promising that happiness, peace, or fulfillment can be found in the next product, the next experience, the next distraction. When we experience something pleasant, a delightful meal, or an engrossing movie, the mind immediately latches on, creating the thought, "This is good. I want more of this." Conversely, when we experience something unpleasant, a harsh noise or a difficult feeling, the mind recoils, creating the thought, "This is bad. I want to get rid of this." We live our lives in this endless oscillation, a frantic dance of grasping for pleasure and pushing away pain. This is the addiction to the next scroll through a social media feed, the next episode in a series, the next purchase that promises a flicker of excitement. It is a thirst that can never be quenched, because sense pleasures are, by their very nature, fleeting. The delicious taste vanishes the moment we swallow. The beautiful music ends. The exciting purchase becomes ordinary. Chasing lasting happiness through sense pleasures is like trying to carry water in a sieve. It is a constant, exhausting effort that always leaves us feeling thirsty once more. Beyond this thirst for sensory gratification lies a deeper, more pervasive craving, This is bhavatana, the thirst to be, the craving for existence and becoming. This is the deep, primal drive of the ego. It is not just about wanting pleasant experiences. It is about wanting to be the one who has them. It is the craving for identity, for significance, for a solid and continuous sense of self. This thirst fuels our ambition to leave a mark on the world, to be remembered, to be seen as important, successful, righteous, or even as a victim deserving of sympathy. We construct elaborate identities from our jobs, our relationships, our accomplishments, our beliefs, and even our suffering. We cling to these roles, the dedicated professional, the loving parent, the rebellious artist, because they give us a feeling of substance, a reason for being. Bhavatanha is the desperate need to build and defend this story of me. The suffering arises with searing intensity when this identity is threatened. We feel profound pain when we are criticized, when we lose a job that defined us, when a relationship that was central to our self-image ends, or simply when we are ignored and feel our existence rendered insignificant. We are clinging to a sandcastle, and our deep anxiety comes from the constant, undeniable truth that the tide of impermanence is always coming in. Then there is the third, and perhaps most paradoxical form of this thirst, vibhavatana, the craving for non-existence, for annihilation. This appears to be the opposite of the thirst to be, but it is born from the very same root of dissatisfaction. Vibhavatanha is the intense aversion to a present reality, the violent desire to get rid of an unpleasant feeling, a painful situation, or even the self that is experiencing them. It is not a calm acceptance of an ending. It is a frantic pushing away. When you feel a surge of anxiety and your mind screams, "I can't stand this. I want it to go away." That is vibhavatanha. When you are filled with anger and feel a destructive urge to obliterate the person or situation causing you pain, that is vibhavatana. It is the desire to escape, to numb, to destroy in its most extreme forms. It can lead to self-harm and suicidal ideation, the ultimate expression of the craving for the self to not be. This form of craving is particularly insidious because it masquerades as a solution. The mind believes that by annihilating the source of pain, it will find peace, but this violent pushing away only strengthens our entanglement with the very thing we are trying to escape. By hating our anxiety, we feed it with our attention and energy. By trying to destroy our pain, we become fixated upon it, binding ourselves ever more tightly to our suffering. An ancient Buddhist parable illustrates this process of self-entanglement perfectly. A hunter, wishing to catch a clever monkey, devised a trap. He took a heavy log and covered it with an incredibly sticky, strong tree sap. The monkey, curious and playful, came down from the trees to investigate. It cautiously poked the log with one finger, which immediately became stuck fast. Annoyed and driven by vibhavatana, the craving to be free of this stuckness, the monkey tried to pull its finger away. When it couldn't, it thought, "I will use my powerful hand to free my finger." It pressed its palm firmly onto the log, and in an instant, its entire hand was trapped. Now growing frantic, its struggle escalated. "I will use my other hand to push this one free," it decided, and slammed its second hand onto the log, only to have it, too, become hopelessly stuck. in a state of pure panic. It tried to use its feet to kick itself free, but each foot in turn became glued to the sap as a last resort. It tried to bite and chew at the trap, and in doing so, its mouth and face became stuck as well. The monkey was now completely immobilized, a prisoner not of the hunter, but of its own desperate, craving-fueled struggle. When the hunter arrived, the monkey was helpless. We are that monkey, and the sticky sap is the world of pleasant and painful experiences. The initial contact is inevitable. We cannot live without touching the world. Our bondage does not come from the sap itself. It comes from our reaction to it. It comes from that first moment of clinging, of aversion, of tanha. When we touch something pleasant, we grasp for it with our other hand. When we touch something painful, we struggle violently to get away. Each reaction, born of this deep inner thirst, entangles us further until our entire being feels trapped in a web of our own making. Seeing this is not a cause for despair or self-blame. It is a moment of supreme empowerment. It means the chains that bind us are not forged of an external, unbreakable metal. They are forged in the furnace of our own mind. The cause of our suffering is not out there, in the world. It is in here, in the nature of our own craving. And if the cause is within us, then the possibility of its cessation, the path to freedom, must also lie within. If a fire burns because it has fuel, then the path to extinguishing it is simply to stop adding fuel. We have now seen the fuel. We have seen the thirst. The hope that now dawns is the possibility of its end. We have walked a path of unflinching honesty. First, by acknowledging the universal reality of dukkha, the deep and subtle unsatisfactoriness of life, and then by tracing it to its source, the insatiable inner thirst of tanha. To stop here would be to leave us with a diagnosis and a cause, a story of confinement with no hope of escape. But the journey of awakening is not a tragedy. It is a story of liberation. We now arrive at the turning point, the breathtaking revelation that is the third noble truth. It is the truth of Nirodha, a word that translates as cessation. It is the profound and life-altering declaration that there can be an end to suffering. If the first truth is the diagnosis of the illness, and the second is the discovery of its cause, the third is the incredible good news of a possible cure. It is the announcement that the prison of our own making has a door, and that door can be opened. This cessation, this ultimate freedom, is known by a name that echoes throughout the world. A name often shrouded in mystery and misconception, Nibbana, or Nirvana. For many, the word conjures images of a celestial paradise, a golden afterlife, or conversely, a state of complete nothingness, an empty void. But nirvana is neither of these things. It is something far more immediate, more profound, and more radical. The word itself offers the clearest clue. It is derived from a root that means to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. The question, then, is what exactly is being extinguished? The Buddha was very clear. What is extinguished are the three consuming fires that fuel all our suffering. These are the fire of greed, craving, and passionate attachment, the fire of hatred, aversion, and anger, and the fire of delusion, ignorance, and confusion. These are the very flames fed by the fuel of tanha. When that fuel is no longer supplied, the fires cease to burn, what remains is not a cold, dark emptiness. What remains is the unconditioned, the unshakable peace, the ultimate security that the mind has been seeking all along. Imagine being lost in a terrifying Dover, feverish dream, full of anxiety, chasing and being chased. Nirvana is the moment of waking up. The frantic, suffering dream self disappears. But you do not cease to exist. On the contrary, you awaken to reality, to the quiet, calm, and lucid awareness of the waking state. Nirvana is this awakening. It is the cessation of the fever, not the death of the patient. It is the end of the illusion of a separate, needy, and embattled self. What is left when this illusion is extinguished is a state of profound clarity, boundless compassion, and a peace so deep it is described as the deathless, because it is no longer subject to the cycles of birth and death, of gain and loss, that define our conditioned experience. It is not a place you go to. It is a state of being you realize, a truth you awaken to, the inherent, luminous nature of your own mind, when it is finally unobscured by the smoke of craving and ignorance. This can sound lofty, abstract, perhaps a goal for a distant future or another lifetime. But one of the most hopeful aspects of this teaching is that nirvana is not an all or nothing, far-off destination. It can be tasted, experienced in moments, in precious glimpses, in this very life. Every time you perform an act of genuine, selfless generosity, without any thought of reward, you are, for that moment, extinguishing the fire of greed. In that instant, you taste a glimpse of nirvana. Every time you are about to react in anger, but you pause, take a breath, and respond with patience or understanding, you are extinguishing the fire of hatred. In that moment of non-reactivity, there is a cool, a spacious peace. That is a taste of nirvana. Every time you are walking in nature, and for a few precious seconds, the relentless inner chatter of your mind falls away, and you are simply present with the feeling of the wind, the sound of the leaves, the vastness of the sky in that moment of pure, non-judgmental awareness. The fire of delusion is temporarily out. That clarity, that simple being, is a taste of nirvana. These moments are profoundly important. They are signposts pointing the way. They are proof that this state of peace is not just a philosophical concept, but a real, tangible possibility. They are the fresh, cool breeze that tells the sailor lost at sea that land is near, inspiring him to continue the journey with renewed vigor and faith. The Buddha offered a beautifully simple analogy to clarify the nature of this cessation. He asked his followers to consider a flame, an oil lamp burning brightly. The flame exists because of certain conditions: the wick, the oil, and the surrounding air. When the oil runs out, the flame flickers and dies. The Buddha then posed a question: where did the flame go? Did it travel north, or south, or east, or west? The question itself is nonsensical. The flame did not go anywhere. It simply ceased to exist because the conditions that supported its existence, namely the fuel, were removed. It was extinguished. The cessation was total and complete. So it is with suffering. Our dukkha, or discontent, is like that flame. It burns because it is fed by the fuel of tanha, the oil of craving, clinging, and aversion. The spiritual path is the process of learning how to stop adding fuel to this fire. Through mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion, we begin to see our cravings and aversions as they arise and learn not to identify with them, not to feed them. As we stop supplying the fuel, the fire of suffering naturally begins to diminish. The cessation, nirodha, is the final extinguishing of that flame. The suffering does not go anywhere. It simply ceases because its cause has been removed. And what is left when the flame of suffering is out is not darkness, but the revelation of something that was always there. Just as the clear sky is revealed when the clouds dissipate, this truth of nirodha is the heart of the Buddha's message of hope. It reframes the entire human predicament. We are not flawed beings doomed to a life of struggle. We are not helpless victims of an unforgiving world. We are simply asleep, caught in a dream of suffering, and we possess the inherent capacity to awaken. The existence of suffering is not the final word. The final word is the existence of its cessation. This knowledge transforms our spiritual practice from a heavy burden into a joyful path of discovery. We are no longer just running away from the pain of dukkha. We are moving toward the tangible, liberating peace of nirvana. We have now seen the beautiful, peaceful shore that lies on the other side of the turbulent ocean of existence. We have received the promise that reaching it is possible. The mind, filled with this profound and realistic hope, now naturally asks the most practical and pressing question of all: how? What is the vessel that can carry us across these troubled waters? What is the path we must walk to travel from the land of suffering to that far shore of peace? This brings us to the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths, the path itself. We have journeyed through the landscape of the human heart, identifying the pervasive friction of dukkha, tracking it to its source in the burning thirst of tanha, and glimpsing the cool, peaceful horizon of nirodha, the cessation of all suffering. A profound sense of hope arises from this knowledge. But hope alone is not enough. A person stranded at sea may feel hope, seeing a distant shore, but without a map and a sturdy vessel, they remain lost. We now arrive at the fourth and final noble truth, the one that provides both the map and the vessel. This is the truth of the path, known as Magga. It is the Buddha's sublime and practical prescription, the detailed, step-by-step guide that leads from the shores of suffering to the lasting peace of liberation. This is not a path of blind faith or rigid dogma, but a path of cultivation, a way of living to be explored and verified by each of us in the laboratory of our own experience. This guide is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. The name itself can sound intimidating, suggesting a long and arduous sequence of 8 steps to be mastered one by one. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The 8 factors of the path are not like rungs on a ladder to be climbed in succession. They are more like the individual strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand is intertwined with the others, and together they create a strength that no single strand could possess on its own. They are to be cultivated simultaneously, each one supporting and deepening all the others in a beautiful and dynamic synergy. As we strengthen our mindfulness, our speech becomes more gentle. As our actions become more compassionate, our mind becomes more concentrated. It is a holistic system for awakening. To make this profound system easier to understand and practice, these 8 factors are often grouped into 3 essential trainings, known as the threefold training of sila, samadhi, and panya. The first training is Sila, which can be translated as ethical conduct. This is the foundation of the entire path. It is concerned with our external behavior, our relationship with the world and with other beings. It is about creating a life of harmlessness and integrity, an outer environment of peace that will support the cultivation of inner peace. If our daily life is filled with conflict, dishonesty, and remorse over our own actions, the mind will be far too agitated to settle into the stillness required for deep insight. Sila is the act of preparing the soil before planting the seed of meditation. This training consists of 3 factors of the path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It is the commitment to speak truthfully and kindly, to act with compassion and respect for all life, and to earn a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or others. This is the bedrock upon which everything else is built. The second training is samadhi, or mental discipline. With the foundation of ethical living established, we can begin the work of training the mind itself. This is the heart of meditative practice. If Sila calms our interactions with the world, samadhi calms the world within our own mind. It is the process of transforming the wild, chaotic monkey mind that constantly swings from thought to thought into a calm, focused, and powerful tool of inquiry. It's about developing inner strength, stability, and clarity. This training is composed of 3 further factors: right effort, the joyful and balanced energy to cultivate wholesome states of mind; right mindfulness, the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness of our inner and outer experience; and right concentration, the ability to unify the mind and rest it upon a single object, leading to profound states of stillness and bliss. This is where we build the structure of our spiritual home, taming the wild energies of the mind and making it a place of refuge and clarity. The third and final training is panya, which means wisdom. This is the pinnacle and the purpose of the path. While Sila creates outer harmony and samadhi creates inner calm, panya is the liberating insight that cuts through the root of all suffering ignorance. It is the ability to see things not as we wish they were, or as they appear to be, but as they truly are. Wisdom is what illuminates the entire path and gives it direction. It is the light that allows us to see the nature of dukkha, the workings of tanha, and the reality of nirodha. This training consists of the remaining 2 factors: right intention, the resolve to act from a place of kindness, compassion, and wisdom rather than greed, hatred, and delusion; and the very first factor of the path, right view. Right view is the correct understanding of the nature of reality, the intellectual grasp of the core teachings that provides the map for our journey. Panya is the roof of our spiritual home, protecting everything within, and it is the brilliant light of the sun that shines through its windows, revealing everything in its true color. This entire 8-fold structure is also known as the middle way. The Buddha himself, before his enlightenment, had explored the 2 extremes of human seeking. As a prince, he lived a life of extreme sensual indulgence. Surrounded by every imaginable pleasure, he discovered that this path only led to a shallow, fleeting happiness that left him feeling empty. Then, as an ascetic, he practiced extreme self-mortification, starving his body and pushing it to the brink of death. He found that this path only led to weakness and a clouded mind, bringing him no closer to the truth. The Noble Eightfold Path is the sublime discovery that arose from rejecting these two extremes. It is a path of balance, of nourishment, of just rightness. There is a beautiful story that illustrates this principle perfectly. One of the Buddha's monks, named Sona, was practicing with ferocious, almost violent intensity. He had been a wealthy young man, and his feet were so delicate that hair grew on his soles. Now, he practiced walking meditation so relentlessly that the path was stained with his blood. Yet he felt he was making no progress and grew deeply discouraged. The Buddha, seeing Sona's state of mind, went to him, knowing that Sona had been a master lute player in his lay life. The Buddha asked him, "Sona, tell me, when the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly, could it produce a beautiful and resonant sound?" Sona replied, "No, Venerable Seer. A string that is too tight will snap." The Buddha then asked, "And what about when the strings were too loose? Could it produce a beautiful sound then?" "No, Venerable Seer." Sona said, "A string that is too loose produces only a dull thud." "And when?" the Buddha asked, "Did your lute produce the most beautiful music?" Sona answered, "Venerable Sir, it was when the strings were tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but were balanced in perfect harmony." The Buddha smiled. "So it is, Sona, with the spiritual path. An effort that is too strenuous leads to restlessness and agitation. An effort that is too slack leads to laziness and stagnation. Cultivate a balanced, harmonious effort. Sona, tune the faculties of your mind like the strings of your lute, and you will find the way. This is the spirit of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete, integrated system for living a life of wisdom and compassion. It is a journey that begins with understanding, is guided by our highest intentions, is expressed through our ethical actions, and is empowered by a disciplined and mindful heart. Each part supports every other part in a beautiful, upward spiral of clarity and peace. This path, this middle way, is the vessel that will carry us across the ocean. Our journey of exploration will now follow its structure, beginning with the very first factor, the one that sets the compass for the entire voyage. For before we can take a single step, we must first know in which direction we are headed. We must begin with right view. Our journey along the Eightfold Path now begins in earnest, and it starts not with an action, not with a vow, but with a change in perception. We begin with right view, or samadhi. This is the compass for our entire voyage. Without right view, our best efforts can lead us astray. Our most sincere practice can be misdirected, and our ethical conduct can lack a firm foundation. Right view is not about being right in an argument or holding a dogmatic belief. It is about seeing. It is about swapping a distorted, smudged, and cracked lens for one that is clear, allowing us to perceive the fundamental nature of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be or as we have been conditioned to see it. It is the difference between navigating the ocean with a child's crayon drawing of the world and navigating with a precise nautical chart. The chart does not create the ocean, but it allows us to travel across it safely and effectively. Right view is that chart, and it is based on the direct, penetrating insight of the Buddha into three universal characteristics of all phenomenal existence. These are the three marks of existence: anicca, dukkha, and anatta. The first mark is anicca, or impermanence. This is the truth that all things, without exception, are in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Everything is a process, a flow. The majestic mountains that seem so solid and eternal are slowly being worn down by wind and rain. The stars in the night sky are great furnaces, burning through their fuel on their way to an eventual death. Our own bodies are a testament to this truth. From the moment of our birth, we are changing. Cells are dying and being replaced. Our physical form shifts. We age. This is not a philosophical abstraction. It is a visceral reality. Even more immediate is the impermanence of our inner world. Sit for just a moment and watch your mind. Thoughts arise from nowhere, linger for a second, and vanish. Feelings surge like waves in the ocean, a wave of joy, a wave of sadness, a wave of irritation, each one cresting and then dissolving back into the vastness. Our moods, our opinions, our energy levels are all in constant motion. The core of our suffering, as we have seen, comes from our deep-seated resistance to this fundamental law. We try to build a permanent shelter on the shifting sands of time. We cling to pleasant feelings, trying to freeze them in place. We grasp onto youth, health, relationships, and possessions as if they were solid, permanent things we could own. This struggle against the universal flow of anicca is like trying to hold back the tide with our bare hands. It is a source of immense and constant stress, disappointment, and sorrow. Right view begins with the simple, courageous acceptance of this flow. It is seeing the world not as a collection of fixed nouns, but as a symphony of dynamic verbs. The second mark of existence is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. We have already explored this truth in depth as the diagnosis of our condition. But here, in the context of right view, we see it in a new light. It is not just a personal problem, it is a universal characteristic that arises directly from anicca, because all things are impermanent. They cannot provide lasting, ultimate satisfaction because we are constantly clinging to these impermanent things for our security and happiness. A state of underlying friction, tension, and dukkha is the inevitable result. Even our most joyful moments are tinged with dukkha because we know they are fleeting. This is not a pessimistic outlook, it is a realistic one. It is understanding that the very nature of conditioned existence, of anything that comes into being, is that it is ultimately vulnerable, unstable, and cannot be a source of permanent refuge. This leads us to the third and most profound and transformative mark of existence, anatta, or not self. This is the teaching that cuts to the very heart of our delusion. From our earliest moments, we build up a powerful sense of being a solid, continuous, and independent I. We feel like there is a permanent self, a CEO in the headquarters of our mind, who is the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, and the master of our destiny. The teaching of anatta invites us to become scientists and investigate this assumption directly. It is not a doctrine that says, "You do not exist." It is a practice of looking deeply to see how we exist. The Buddha analyzed what we call a self into 5 components, or aggregates. The first is form. Our physical body. Is this body truly me or mine? It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick, and is composed entirely of not me elements like the food we have eaten, the water we have drunk, and the air we have breathed. The second is feeling. The pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations that arise from contact with the world. Are these feelings me? They are fleeting and unpredictable, arising and passing away like the weather. The third is perception, the mental faculty that recognizes and labels things. Are our perceptions me? They are heavily conditioned by our past experiences, our culture, and our moods. The fourth is mental formations, which includes all our thoughts, intentions, opinions, and habits. Is this chaotic stream of mental chatter the real me? It is often contradictory and unruly, and we certainly do not have full control over it. The fifth is consciousness, the raw capacity of awareness itself. Is this awareness me? But consciousness is also dependent. It only arises in relation to an object consciousness of a sight, of a sound, of a thought. It is not a standalone entity. When we investigate in this way, we discover something astonishing. The self we have been cherishing and defending our entire lives cannot be found as a separate, solid thing. Instead, what we call a self is a dynamic, interdependent process, a temporary convergence of these five ever-changing aggregates. It is less like a solid statue and more like a flowing river. There is a famous dialogue from the ancient texts that brilliantly illustrates this insight. A learned Greco-Bactrian king named Milinda, known for his love of philosophical debate, sought out a wise Buddhist monk named Nagasena to challenge him. The king arrived in his royal chariot and began by asking, "Venerable sir, what is your name?" Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty, but this is only a designation, a conventional term. There is no permanent person to be found here." King Milinda, a skilled debater, smiled. "If there is no person," he retorted, "then who is it that wears these robes? Who eats, sleeps, and walks? Who is it that I am speaking to?" Nagasena remained calm and countered with a question of his own. "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here? On foot? Or in a vehicle? I came in a chariot." The king replied proudly, "Very well," said Nagasena. "Then please, explain to me what a chariot is. Is the long pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Are the wheels the chariot?" "No." "Is the axle, the frame, the ropes, the yoke? Are any of these individual parts the chariot?" To each question, the king was forced to answer no. Then, Nagasena concluded gently, "Is the chariot something else, separate from all of its parts?" "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then delivered the final point. "Your Majesty, you have said that chariot is just a convenient name we give to this collection of parts when they are assembled in this particular way. In exactly the same manner, Nagasena is a convenient name for this collection of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. But if you look for a permanent, independent owner behind them, it cannot be found. This is the essence of anatta. Understanding it is the key to liberation. When we see that the I that is greedy is just a temporary combination of thoughts and feelings, the greed loses its power. When we see that the I that has been insulted is not a solid entity but a fleeting process, the sting of the insult dissolves. When we see that the I we are so desperately trying to protect and promote is like King Melinda's chariot, a conventional label for an assembly of parts, the great burden of ego begins to fall away. Right view, this clear seeing of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, is not a belief to be adopted. It is a lens to be looked through, a working hypothesis to be tested against every moment of our experience. It is the foundation of wisdom, and it is this wisdom that begins to unravel the knots of our suffering. Once our view is clear, once the map accurately reflects the territory, the next step on our path becomes obvious. We must align our will and our motivation with this newfound clarity. We must cultivate right intention. With our perspective clarified by right view, we stand at a critical juncture. We have the map, but a map is useless if we do not decide where to go. Seeing the landscape of reality is one thing, choosing a skillful path through it is another. This is where we encounter the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right intention, or samma sayunkappa. If right view is the eyes of the path, right intention is its heart. It is the conscious and deliberate act of aligning our will, our motivations, and our deepest aspirations with the wisdom we have begun to cultivate. It is the rudder that steers the ship of our life, ensuring that the insights gained from right view are not left as dry intellectual concepts, but are translated into a living, breathing force that shapes our inner world. Thought is the forerunner of all things. Before a word is spoken, before an action is taken, an intention, however fleeting, arises in the mind. Right intention is the art of cultivating the seeds of awakening and gently weeding out the seeds of suffering at this most subtle and powerful level. This practice is threefold, encompassing three wholesome intentions that stand in direct opposition to the forces of greed, hatred, and cruelty. The first facet of right intention is the intention of renunciation, or nekkhamma. The word renunciation can sound harsh, suggesting a life of grim denial and joyless sacrifice. But in the context of the path, its meaning is one of profound liberation and lightness. It is not about punishing the self, but about freeing the self from its burdens. Renunciation is the direct antidote to tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. It is the intention to let go. It is the wisdom that recognizes that chasing fleeting pleasures is an endless and exhausting game, and that true happiness is not found in grasping, but in releasing. Imagine you are on a long journey and your backpack is filled with heavy, beautiful, but ultimately useless stones. Renunciation is the moment of clarity when you realize these stones are not helping you. They are only weighing you down. With a sense of relief, not loss, you set them down by the side of the road and continue your journey with a newfound lightness in your step. This is the spirit of nekkhamma. It is the intention to simplify, to untangle ourselves from the complexities of excessive wants, and to find a deep and abiding contentment that is not dependent on the ever-changing conditions of the external world. It is the choice to seek peace over pleasure and freedom over fleeting gratification. The second facet is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the radiant heart of the path, the direct antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, and hatred. It is the conscious cultivation of what is known as metta, or loving kindness. This is not a sentimental, possessive love reserved only for those we like. It is a boundless, universal goodwill, a simple, powerful wish for the well-being and happiness of all living beings. Without exception and without condition, it begins with ourselves, learning to be a true friend to our own heart, and radiates outwards to encompass our loved ones, neutral people, and even those we find difficult. The practice of right intention means that when we notice the familiar stirrings of irritation, judgment, or anger arising in the mind, we make a conscious pivot. We may not be able to force a feeling of love in that moment, but we can plant the flag of our intention. We can silently whisper, "May you be well, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering." This simple shift in intention changes the entire chemistry of the mind. It stops the fire of hatred from being fed more fuel. It is the choice to meet the world, not with a closed fist of aversion, but with an open hand of kindness. The third and final facet is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the embodiment of compassion, or karuna, and it is the direct antidote to cruelty and violence in all its forms. Whether physical, verbal, or mental, the intention of harmlessness flows naturally from the intention of goodwill. If we genuinely wish for all beings to be happy, it follows that we must also wish for them to be free from suffering. Avihisa is the commitment to live in a way that protects life and minimizes the harm we cause. It is more than just a passive avoidance of violence. It is an active empathy, a sensitivity to the pain of others, a trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is the intention that guides us to step around the ant on the sidewalk, to listen with patience to someone in distress, and to refrain from thoughts that wish harm upon another. This intention of deep, active compassion becomes the ethical compass that guides our every word and deed, transforming our life into an offering of safety and refuge for the world around us. There is a timeless story told by the elders of the Cherokee people that beautifully captures the essence of right intention. An old man is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he says to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil, he is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued. "The other is good, he is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person. 2. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." Right intention is the conscious, moment-by-moment choice of which wolf to feed. Our mind is a garden, and thoughts are seeds. A thought of resentment can be watered and nurtured by replaying a grievance over and over, until it grows into a thorny bush of hatred. Or it can be recognized, and the soil of the mind can be intentionally reseeded with a thought of understanding or goodwill. The Dhammapada, one of the oldest Buddhist texts, opens with the profound statement, "Mind precedes all phenomena. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows them like a never-departing shadow." The purification of our lives begins here, in the silent, invisible realm of our intentions. An intention of generosity is the seed of a kind act, An intention of ill will is the seed of a harsh word. By tending to the garden of our mind, by consciously choosing to cultivate the intentions of letting go, of goodwill, and of harmlessness, we ensure that the fruits that grow in our life will be sweet, wholesome, and nourishing for both ourselves and others. This is not a passive hope. It is an active shaping of our character and our destiny, with our heart's compass now aligned with wisdom and compassion. The first place this inner shift finds expression is through the gateway of the mouth. The pure stream of our intentions naturally flows into the river of our words. As the pure intentions of our heart, nurtured by right view, begin to take root, they seek their first expression in the world. The most immediate and constant bridge between our inner landscape and the lives of others is our speech. Words, though weightless and invisible, possess a formidable power. They can be daggers that inflict wounds lasting a lifetime, or they can be balms that soothe, heal, and inspire. They can build walls of separation or weave threads of connection. The third factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech, or samarvata, is the profound practice of wielding this power with mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. It is not a rigid censorship of our expression, but a conscious training in communication, transforming every conversation from a potential source of conflict into an opportunity for practice, and offering this training, beautifully simple yet deeply challenging, is traditionally broken down into 4 key principles. The first principle is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling deliberate lies, but its scope is far broader. It is an invitation to cultivate a radical honesty in all our communications. This includes refraining from exaggeration meant to inflate our ego, avoiding subtle deceptions intended to manipulate a situation, and honoring the promises we make, both to others and to ourselves. It means not presenting a false image to the world, but having the courage to be authentic. We often lie out of fear of punishment, fear of disapproval, fear of not being good enough. The practice of right speech invites us to look deeply at these fears. The reward for this practice is immense. When we live truthfully, we no longer need to carry the exhausting mental burden of remembering which story we told to which person. Our inner and outer worlds begin to align. This creates a foundation of profound integrity and self-trust. We become a reliable refuge for others. And more importantly, our own mind becomes a peaceful and uncomplicated place to inhabit. The second principle is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the act of using words as a weapon to poison relationships, to set one person against another, or to damage another's reputation. It includes backbiting, spreading malicious gossip, and speaking in a way that intentionally creates suspicion and disharmony. The energy of divisive speech is toxic. It thrives on creating factions and feeding on negativity. The antidote, and the active practice of right speech, is to speak words that promote harmony and reconciliation. This means making a conscious choice not to participate in negative gossip. When we hear others speaking ill of someone, we can choose to remain silent or gently change the subject. Even more actively, it means looking for and speaking of the good qualities in others. When conflict arises, as it inevitably does, one who practices right speech seeks to be a bridge builder, using words to foster understanding, to encourage empathy, and to heal rifts. Rather than to widen them, It is the conscious choice to be a force for unity in a world that is often fractured by misunderstanding. The third principle is to abstain from harsh speech. This includes all forms of verbal abuse, shouting, insulting, name-calling, belittling, and using sarcasm as a weapon to inflict pain. It is any form of speech that is intended to wound, dominate, or humiliate. The wounds inflicted by harsh words are often deeper and slower to heal than any physical injury. They echo in the mind for years, eroding self-worth and creating deep-seated fear. The antidote to harsh speech is not merely neutral speech, but the active cultivation of what is known as loving speech. It is the practice of speaking to others with the same gentleness, patience, and kindness that we would offer to someone we dearly love. This does not mean we cannot disagree or express difficult truths, but it means we do so with respect, from a place of care, and with a genuine desire for a positive outcome, rather than a desire to win or to hurt. It requires us to be mindful of our own inner state, recognizing that the impulse for harshness often springs from our own unacknowledged pain, fear, or frustration. By choosing gentleness, we offer a balm not only to the listener, but also to ourselves. The fourth and final principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is pointless, frivolous, and disconnected from any real purpose. It is the endless stream of gossip about people we don't know, speculative talk about things we know nothing about, aimless complaining, and the nervous filling of every moment of silence with noise. Idle chatter dissipates our mental energy, distracts our focus, and clutters the mind with trivialities. The practice of right speech encourages us to value our words and to value silence. It prompts us to ask ourselves before we speak, is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is this the right time and place to say it? This doesn't mean we must always be serious and solemn. There is great joy in light-hearted, friendly conversation, but it asks us to be mindful of the intention and effect of our words. Part of this practice is learning to embrace noble silence. This is not an awkward, empty silence, but a rich, alert, and peaceful quiet. It is the silence of deep listening, of being fully present with another person, without feeling the need to interject with our own stories and opinions. Often, the greatest gift we can give someone is not our advice, but our silent, unwavering, compassionate attention. A beautiful story from the ancient world serves as a perfect guide for this practice. One day, an acquaintance ran up to the great philosopher Socrates and said, "Socrates, do you know what I just heard about one of your friends?" "Hold on a moment," Socrates replied. "Before you tell me, I'd like you to pass a little test. It's called the test of the 3 sieves. 3 sieves? The man asked. "Yes," Socrates continued. "The first sieve is the sieve of truth. Are you absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man shook his head. "Well, no. I actually just heard about it from someone else." "All right," said Socrates. "So you don't really know if it's true or not. Now let's try the second sieve. The sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my friend something good?" "No." On the contrary, the man started. "So," Socrates interrupted, "you want to tell me something bad about him, but you're not certain it's true. You may still pass the test though, because there's one sieve left, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me about my friend going to be useful to me? The man shrugged. No, not really. Well, concluded Socrates, if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me at all? This simple test encapsulates the spirit of right speech. It is a profound daily practice of mindfulness, transforming our relationship with ourselves and with everyone we meet. By speaking truthfully, we cultivate integrity. By speaking words that unite, we build community. By speaking with gentleness, we become a source of healing. And by speaking with meaning, or by choosing a noble silence, we cultivate a mind that is clear, calm, and wise. As our intentions become pure and our speech becomes skillful, the next natural step in this unfolding path is to bring this same mindfulness and compassion into the realm of our physical deeds. As the stream of our wholesome intentions purifies our speech, it naturally continues to flow, extending into the realm of our physical deeds. The fourth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right action, or samma kammanta, is the practice of making our body a vessel for compassion and our every action an expression of our deepest wisdom. If right intention is setting the course and right speech is communicating it, right action is skillfully steering the ship through the waters of our daily life. It is the recognition that our physical presence in the world has an impact, and it is the commitment to ensure that this impact is one of healing and harmlessness, not of pain and conflict. The practice of right action is traditionally understood through three fundamental principles, which serve as ethical guidelines for a life of peace. The first principle is to abstain from taking life. At its most direct, this is the commitment not to kill or intentionally harm any living being. But its spirit extends far beyond this. To practice this precept fully is to actively cultivate a reverence for all life. It is to recognize that every creature, from the most complex mammal to the most humble insect, shares with us a fundamental desire to live and a fear of death. Seeing this shared nature, compassion arises naturally. This principle calls us to be a protector, not a destroyer. In a modern context, this extends to our relationship with the entire ecosystem, encouraging us to live in a way that supports and sustains the natural world rather than exploiting it. It is the practice of gentleness, of treading lightly on the earth, and of seeing the spark of life in all its diverse and beautiful forms. The second principle is to abstain from taking what is not given. While this certainly includes refraining from obvious acts of theft, its application in our lives is much deeper and more subtle. It is the principle of radical honesty and integrity in all of our affairs. It means not taking credit for another person's work, not exploiting a customer's ignorance in a business transaction, not using office supplies for personal projects, not taking more than our fair share. It is about respecting the property, the efforts, and the boundaries of others. The antidote to taking what is not given is the active practice of generosity, or dana. It is the cultivation of a heart that finds more joy in giving than in receiving. When we live by this principle, we build a foundation of trust with those around us, and we free ourselves from the anxiety and guilt that always accompany dishonesty. Our life becomes transparent and open, unburdened by the complexities of deceit. The third principle is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is not a puritanical rejection of human sexuality, which is a natural part of life. Rather, it is a call to bring mindfulness, kindness, and responsibility into our most intimate relationships. Sexual misconduct refers to any sexual act that causes harm to ourselves or to others. This includes any form of exploitation or coercion, where another person is treated as an object for our gratification rather than a whole being deserving of respect. It includes infidelity, the breaking of vows and commitments that leads to profound pain and the destruction of trust. The essence of this principle is to ensure that our sexual expression is rooted in mutual consent, genuine affection, and a deep respect for the emotional well-being of everyone involved. It is about ensuring this powerful energy is a source of true connection and joy, not of suffering and harm. Underpinning all of right action is a correct understanding of karma, often translated as karma. For many, karma is a misunderstood concept, seen as a kind of cosmic justice system or a predetermined fate that we are powerless to change. But the true meaning of karma is simply action, and its law is the universal law of cause and effect. It is not fatalistic, it is incredibly empowering. Every intentional action we perform with our body, our speech, or our mind is a seed that we plant. Actions rooted in wholesome intentions like generosity, kindness, and wisdom are wholesome seeds. When they ripen, they will bear the fruit of happiness and peace. Actions rooted in unwholesome intentions like greed, hatred, and delusion are unwholesome seeds. And when they ripen, they will bear the fruit of suffering. We are the farmers of our own existence. We may not have chosen the karma that has ripened as our present circumstances, but in every single moment, we have the absolute power to choose which seeds we are planting for the future. There is a wise old story that beautifully illustrates the futility of judging outcomes and the wisdom of focusing on right action in the present. An old farmer lived in a poor village. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors gathered to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "What wonderful luck," they exclaimed. The farmer again replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more. "Oh, what dreadful luck," they lamented. "Maybe," said the farmer. The following week, military officials came to the village to conscript all the able-bodied young men into the army for a war in which most would surely perish. They saw the farmer's son with his broken leg and passed him by. The neighbors gathered, their faces filled with awe. "What incredible luck," they said. The farmer just smiled. Maybe. The wisdom of this story is profound. We, like the neighbors, are constantly judging events as good or bad based on a very limited, short-term perspective. We simply cannot know the full, complex web of causes and effects that ripple out from any single event. The path of wisdom is not to become attached to outcomes or to be swayed by fortune and misfortune. It is to cultivate a steady mind and to focus on what we can control, our own actions in the present moment. By grounding ourselves in the principles of right action in harmlessness, honesty, and respect, we plant the best possible seeds, and we can then have the wisdom to meet whatever harvest comes with equanimity and peace. In our complex world, right action calls us to extend these principles into every area of our lives. It is the conscious choice to buy products that are ethically made and environmentally sustainable. It is the act of volunteering in our community. It is the simple gesture of a smile to a stranger, or offering our seat to someone who needs it more. No kind action is ever insignificant. Each one is a vote for the kind of person we want to be and the kind of world we want to live in. It is the practice of making our physical body a true temple for our highest aspirations, a source of safety and peace for all beings. As this compassionate conduct begins to permeate our personal lives, the path naturally asks us to examine the arena where we spend most of our time and energy, our work. As the principles of right action begin to shape our conduct, the path invites us to examine the single largest area in which our actions unfold our work. For most of us, our livelihood occupies the majority of our waking hours, our energy, and our creativity. The fifth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right livelihood or sama aiva, is the crucial practice of ensuring that the way we sustain our own life does not cause harm to the lives of others, but instead contributes to the well-being of the whole. It asks us to look honestly at our role in the complex web of commerce and to align our professional life with our deepest ethical values. It is the recognition that our paycheck should not come at the cost of our peace of mind. The Buddha, with his profound understanding of human society, offered clear guidelines for his lay followers, pointing out 5 types of business that are inherently harmful and should be avoided. These ancient categories, when examined, reveal a timeless ethical wisdom that is more relevant today than ever. The first is dealing in weapons, which is the business of profiting from conflict, violence, and death. The second is dealing in living beings, which in the Buddha's time referred to the slave trade and the raising of animals for slaughter, both of which commodify life and profit from bondage and suffering. The third is dealing in meat, a direct extension of the previous principle, meaning one should not earn a living from the flesh of creatures that have been killed. The fourth is dealing in intoxicants, which is the business of selling substances that cloud the mind, cause heedlessness, and lead to immense suffering for individuals and families. And the fifth is dealing in poisons, profiting from substances designed explicitly to kill and to harm. These 5 guidelines are not arbitrary rules. They all point to a single, compassionate principle. One should not base one's livelihood on any activity that requires the suffering, exploitation, or delusion of others. In our complex modern world, the spirit of these principles calls us to a much broader and more nuanced inquiry. While most of us are not directly involved in selling weapons or poisons, we may find ourselves participating in systems that cause subtle but widespread harm. Right livelihood today asks us to consider working in industries based on deception, such as predatory lending that traps people in debt, or marketing that creates artificial feelings of inadequacy to fuel consumerism. It calls us to question our involvement with companies whose core practices lead to the destruction of the environment, which is a form of violence against countless living beings and future generations. It encourages us to be wary of livelihoods built upon social injustice, such as industries that rely on exploited labor or perpetuate systemic inequality. It also invites us to look at the subtle ways we might trade in intoxicants or delusion, such as developing addictive technologies that are designed to capture human attention for profit, or working in fields of rampant speculation that create financial instability without producing any real value for society. The question is always the same: does my work help, or does it harm? Does it create clarity, or does it create confusion? Does it support life, or does it diminish it? It is crucial to understand, however, that right livelihood is not about a rigid list of good and bad professions. One can be a doctor who unethically pushes expensive and unnecessary treatments, or one can be a janitor who performs their work with such mindfulness and care that they bring a sense of dignity and peace to their entire workplace. The focus is as much on the how as it is on the what. It is about bringing our practice to work with us. It's about performing our duties with honesty and integrity, treating our colleagues, customers, and clients with respect and kindness, and refusing to cut corners or engage in deceit, even when it might be profitable. It's about transforming our work, whatever it may be, into a field for practice. The life of the great lay disciple Anathapindika serves as a perfect inspiration for the practice of right livelihood. Anathapindika was one of the wealthiest merchants in all of India, a testament to the fact that the Buddhist path is not opposed to success or prosperity. His very name, given to him by the people, meant feeder of the helpless and the poor, which speaks volumes about his character even before he met the Buddha. Upon his first encounter with the Buddha, he was so moved that his faith was instantly awakened, and he became the Buddha's chief patron and supporter in a famous act of devotion. He sought to purchase a park from Prince Jeta to build a monastery for the Buddha and his monks. The prince, not wishing to sell, jokingly said he would only sell the park for whatever price it took to cover the ground with gold coins. To the prince's astonishment, Anathapindika began immediately, bringing carts filled with gold from his treasury and methodically covering the entire park. This act of staggering generosity was made possible by the wealth he had accumulated through his business. But the crucial point is that he earned this wealth through scrupulously honest and ethical means. He was known for his fairness and integrity. He then used this rightly earned wealth not for his own endless luxury, but as a powerful instrument for good, supporting the spiritual community and alleviating poverty wherever he saw it. Anathapindika is the timeless model of a householder who is deeply engaged in the world of commerce, yet whose work is a shining example of compassion and wisdom in action. He shows us that our work does not have to be a source of stress that we must recover from. Instead, it can become our primary arena for spiritual growth. A challenging project can become a practice in patience and skillful effort. A difficult colleague can become our teacher in compassion and right speech. A repetitive, boring task can become a powerful exercise in moment-to-moment mindfulness. A success for our team can be an opportunity to practice selfless joy for the good fortune of others. When we reframe our work in this way, it ceases to be a separate, secular part of our life and becomes a rich, integrated, and meaningful aspect of our path. We find a profound sense of integrity when the values we hold in our heart are the same values we enact in our workplace from 9 to 5. With right livelihood, we complete the first major division of the path, the great foundation of sila, or ethical conduct. Through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we have created a life that is clean, harmonious, and blameless. We have prepared the soil, removing the rocks of conflict and the weeds of remorse. The ground is now stable, fertile, and ready but to build our house of wisdom, to cultivate the deep states of peace and insight that lead to liberation. We need more than just a good foundation. We need energy. We need discipline. And we need tools to work directly with the mind itself. This brings us to the next stage of our journey, the training in samadhi, or mental discipline. And this training begins with learning how to skillfully apply our energy through the practice of right effort with the firm, ethical foundation of sila established through our speech, actions, and livelihood. Our spiritual home is built on solid ground. We have created an outer life of harmlessness and integrity, which provides the stability needed for the deeper work to begin. Now, we turn inward. We enter the second phase of the path, the training in samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the art and science of working directly with the mind, and the very first factor in this training, the engine that powers our entire inner journey, is the sixth factor of the path, right effort, or samma vayama. The word effort can sometimes conjure images of strain, of gritting our teeth and forcing our way through obstacles, but the energy of right effort is of a different quality. It is not a tense, rigid striving, but a balanced, joyful, and persistent application of our will. It is the courageous and heroic energy that turns passive intention into active cultivation. Right effort is the wise and compassionate gardener of our mind, who knows exactly when to weed, when to plant, when to water, and when to protect. This practice is traditionally guided by four great efforts. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the wisdom of the vigilant gatekeeper. An unwholesome state is any thought, emotion, or impulse rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion. This effort is about guarding the doors of our senses, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and being mindful of what we allow to enter our inner world. In practical terms, this means making conscious choices about the media we consume, the conversations we participate in, and the environments we place ourselves in. If we know that watching violent movies agitates our mind, we make the effort to prevent that input. If we know that engaging in negative gossip fuels feelings of cynicism and ill will, we make the effort to steer clear of it. It is far easier and wiser to prevent a spark from landing on dry grass than it is to fight a raging forest fire. This preventative effort is an act of profound self-care, creating a mental environment that is naturally more peaceful and less prone to disturbance. Of course, we are not perfect gatekeepers. Despite our best efforts, unwholesome states will inevitably arise. This brings us to the second practice, the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. This is the work of the skillful gardener who sees that a weed has already sprouted in the flower bed. The wrong approach is to either ignore the weed, allowing it to grow stronger and spread its seeds, or to feel like a failure for having let it grow. The skillful approach is to deal with it wisely and without delay. When a state of anger, jealousy, anxiety, or obsessive desire takes root in the mind, our practice is to recognize it clearly and apply an antidote. We can meet a thought of anger with a conscious reflection on loving kindness. We can counter a feeling of greed by deliberately contemplating generosity or the impermanence of the thing we desire. We can shift our attention from an anxious train of thought to the physical sensations of our breath. This is not suppression, which is like pushing a weed down into the soil where its roots grow stronger. This is a skillful uprooting and replacement, a conscious choice to withdraw our energy from what is harmful and reinvest it in what is helpful. The spiritual path is not only about weeding, It is also about actively planting flowers. This is the third practice, the effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the proactive, joyful side of cultivation. The gardener does not simply wait for flowers to appear by chance. She actively sows the seeds. If we feel our mind is barren, lacking in joy or compassion, we can take deliberate steps to cultivate these qualities. We can set aside time to read an inspiring text, listen to a Dharma talk, or reflect on the noble qualities of our teachers. We can intentionally practice generating thoughts of loving kindness for ourselves and others. We can mindfully recall past moments of generosity or kindness, allowing the positive feeling to re-emerge in the present. This is the effort of taking responsibility for our own inner sunshine, of knowing that we have the power to introduce light and warmth into our own mind through our conscious, dedicated effort. Finally, once a flower has bloomed, it needs to be cared for. This is the fourth practice, the effort to maintain and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. When a moment of genuine peace, clarity, compassion, or joy arises during our day, it is a precious gift. The wrong approach is to ignore it or take it for granted, allowing it to wither away. The skillful effort is to recognize it, to savor it, and to nurture it. When you feel a sense of calm from a few deep breaths, the practice is to stay with that feeling, to explore it, to let it sink into your body and mind. When a feeling of genuine kindness arises, we can hold it in our awareness, allowing it to grow stronger and more stable. By giving our attention and appreciation to these wholesome states, we are reinforcing the positive neural pathways in our brain. We are watering the flowers, ensuring they grow strong, blossom fully, and produce the seeds for future moments of peace and well-being. The quality of this fourfold effort is paramount. Here, the lesson of Sona and his lute string is our most valuable guide. If our effort is too slack, like a loose string, we fall into laziness, procrastination, and complacency. We wait for ideal conditions that never arrive, and our practice stagnates. If our effort is too tight, like a taut string, we become tense, anxious, and filled with a grim, joyless striving. We criticize ourselves for every perceived failure and burn out from the sheer strain of it all. Right effort is the middle way. It is the perfectly tuned string, resonating with a quality of joyful, patient, and unwavering persistence. The timeless fable of the tortoise and the hare serves as another perfect illustration. The hare is blessed with incredible natural speed and talent. He represents the kind of effort that is sporadic, intense, but driven by ego and arrogance. He runs in great bursts but is easily distracted and complacent. The tortoise, on the other hand, is slow and seemingly disadvantaged, but he possesses the one quality that truly matters on a long journey: steady, consistent, and humble persistence. He does not get discouraged by the hare's speed. He does not get distracted. He simply keeps placing one foot in front of the other, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. In the end, it is the tortoise's gentle, relentless consistency that wins the race. Right effort is the spirit of the tortoise. It is the wisdom of showing up for our practice every day, even if it's just for a short while, rather than making grand, heroic efforts once a month. It is this quality of patient, durable, and cheerful energy that carries us steadily along the path. This sustained, balanced effort is one of the greatest acts of kindness we can offer to ourselves. It is the choice to be a compassionate coach rather than a demanding drill sergeant for our own mind. It is the life-affirming energy that propels us forward, transforming our practice from a solemn duty into a creative and deeply engaging process of growth. Yet, this powerful engine of right effort, in order to be truly effective, needs a sophisticated steering system to know precisely what needs to be prevented, abandoned, aroused, or maintained. We need an intimate, moment-by-moment awareness of our inner landscape. The will to act must be guided by the light of clear seeing. This heroic energy of our effort finds its ultimate skillful expression when it is fused with the practice of right mindfulness. We have now arrived at the very heart of the path, the central pillar that supports the entire structure of our awakening. This is the seventh factor, right mindfulness, or sama sati. If right effort is the engine that propels us forward, right mindfulness is the clear-eyed driver who sees the road, feels the engine's power, and holds the wheel with a steady hand. It is the most essential of all the mental faculties, for it is the quality of awareness itself, the light that illuminates our experience and allows all the other path factors to function effectively. So often, we live our lives on autopilot, lost in a thick fog of thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future. We eat without tasting, walk without feeling the ground, and listen without truly hearing. We are physically present, but our minds are 1,000 miles away. Right mindfulness is the radical act of waking up from this dream. It is the simple, yet profound, a practice of returning to the present moment, again and again, and paying attention on purpose, without judgment. A common misconception is that mindfulness is about emptying the mind or stopping our thoughts. This is not the case. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. We cannot simply will our thoughts to cease. Mindfulness is not a battle against our thoughts. It is a change in our relationship to them. It is the difference between being swept away by a river and sitting peacefully on the riverbank, watching the water flow by. The practice is not to empty the mind, but to know what the mind is doing. Is it thinking? Is it feeling? Is it remembering? Mindfulness is the clear, bright, knowing quality that observes this inner landscape with a gentle curiosity. The most fundamental tool for this practice, our most faithful anchor to the present moment, is our own breath. The breath is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is always happening right now. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future. By simply bringing our attention to the physical sensation of the breath entering and leaving the body, we tether our wandering mind to the reality of the present. The instruction is beautifully simple. Feel the air at the tip of the nostrils, or feel the gentle rise and fall of the abdomen. Do not try to control it. Just allow it to be as it is, and rest your awareness upon its natural rhythm. When the mind wanders, as it inevitably will, the practice is not to criticize yourself, but to gently and kindly notice, the mind has wandered, and then softly guide it back to the breath. This act of returning, over and over, is the core muscle of mindfulness that we are strengthening. To guide this practice, the Buddha laid out a comprehensive map for exploring our own experience, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first foundation is the contemplation of the body. This is where we ground our awareness in the physical reality of our existence. We practice being aware of our posture, knowing I am sitting or I am walking. We practice scanning our attention through the body, noticing subtle sensations of warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, or vibration, not as my tingling foot, but simply as pure, impersonal physical energy. This grounds us and helps to dissolve our habit of living entirely in our heads. The second foundation is the contemplation of feelings, or Vedana. This refers to the immediate, raw feeling tone that accompanies every experience. These tones are of three types: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. When we see a beautiful sunset, a pleasant feeling arises. When we hear a jarring noise, an unpleasant feeling arises. When we feel the sensation of our clothes on our skin, it is likely a neutral feeling. The practice of mindfulness here is to simply notice this feeling tone as it arises, without getting caught in the chain of reaction. We observe pleasant feeling is here without grasping for more, and we observe unpleasant feeling is here without pushing it away. This practice is incredibly powerful because it intercepts tanya, our thirst and craving, at its very root. By observing the raw feeling before it solidifies into a story of, I like this or I hate this, we create a space of freedom and stop being a puppet to our automatic reactions. The third foundation is the contemplation of the mind itself, or citta. Here, we turn our awareness back onto the mind that is aware. We learn to recognize its changing states. Like looking into a mirror, we notice, the mind is currently experiencing greed, or the mind is free from greed. We see, this is a scattered mind, or this is a calm mind. There is no judgment. We are not saying I am a bad person because my mind is angry. We are simply, clearly, recognizing the weather pattern that is currently passing through our consciousness. This objective recognition is what begins to free us from being completely identified with our moods and mental states. We realize we are not the anger. We are the awareness that knows anger is present. The fourth foundation, the contemplation of mental objects, or Dhamma, is where mindfulness and wisdom fully merge. Here, we learn to see our experience through the clarifying lens of the teachings. When a strong desire arises, we don't just see it as a feeling, we recognize it as a manifestation of tanha. We observe its impermanent nature, how it arises and passes away. We see its inherent unsatisfactoriness, how it agitates the mind. We investigate it and see that it is not self, that there is no solid I who is doing the wanting. We see our thoughts and emotions not as personal problems, but as impersonal phenomena, like clouds passing in the sky. This is the practice that directly leads to liberating insight. Imagine a skilled acrobat walking on a tightrope stretched across a vast, deep canyon. The crowd below is a cacophony of cheers and jeers. To make it safely to the other side, the acrobat's focus must be absolute. If he allows his mind to be distracted by the crowd, the pull of praise, or the sting of criticism, he will falter. If he makes the mistake of looking down into the terrifying abyss below, dwelling on past falls or future fears, he will lose his balance and plummet. His only hope, his only path to safety, is to place his entire being, his whole attention, on the reality of the present moment, the feeling of the rough rope under the sole of his foot, the subtle shift of his weight, the gentle sway in the wind, the placement of his next single step. Our life is this tightrope walk. The past and future are dangerous chasms that pull at our attention. Mindfulness is the supreme skill that allows us to stay balanced in the only place where life is actually happening right here, on the fragile, precious rope of the present moment. The ultimate goal is to take this practice off the meditation cushion and carry it into every aspect of our daily lives. We can practice mindful eating, truly tasting and appreciating our food rather than consuming it distractedly. We can practice mindful walking, feeling the earth beneath our feet. We can practice mindful listening, offering another person the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided attention. In doing so, right mindfulness becomes the gentle, steady light that illuminates our path. It allows us to apply right effort skillfully, to see the truth of right view directly, and to meet our life not with resistance, but with a wise and compassionate embrace. As we cultivate this unwavering, moment-to-moment presence, the mind naturally becomes more settled, stable, and unified. This sustained mindfulness, like a gentle, steady rain, softens the hard ground of the mind, preparing it for the profound states of calm and clarity that arise in the practice of right concentration. As our practice of right mindfulness deepens, becoming more continuous and stable, a remarkable transformation begins to occur. The mind, which was once like a restless butterfly flitting from flower to flower, gradually becomes more like a honeybee, able to rest deeply and absorb the nectar of a single point. This natural evolution from broad awareness to one-pointed focus is the eighth and final factor of the noble eightfold path right concentration, or Samma Samadhi. It represents the culmination of the mental discipline training and the sharpening of the mind into a tool of extraordinary power and clarity. Samadhi is the practice of unifying the mind, gathering all of its scattered energies and bringing them into a state of serene, unshakable focus. If mindfulness is the gentle hand that holds the flashlight, concentration is the act of narrowing its beam into a focused, penetrating laser of awareness. It is important to understand the supportive and synergistic relationship between mindfulness and concentration. They are like two wings of a bird. Both are essential for flight. Mindfulness maintains a broad, peripheral awareness, noticing when the mind begins to stray from its object of focus and gently guiding it back. It is the loving shepherd that keeps the flock of thoughts from wandering too far. Concentration is the deep resting of that awareness on the chosen object, allowing the mind to settle and become absorbed. Mindfulness is the lookout in the crow's nest who spots the destination, while concentration is the skilled helmsman who holds the ship steady on its course. Without mindfulness, concentration could become a dull, trance-like state. Without concentration, mindfulness would lack the stability and power to see into the deeper nature of reality. Together, they create a mind that is both brilliantly clear and profoundly still. Right concentration is not, as is sometimes believed, a state of unconsciousness, a blank-minded trance, or an escape from the world. It is, in fact, the very opposite. The mind in a state of samadhi is exceptionally awake, lucid, and vibrant. The key difference is that it is free from its usual agitation and distraction. Imagine trying to read a complex book in the middle of a loud, chaotic marketplace. It would be nearly impossible. Right concentration is the act of stepping out of the marketplace and into a quiet, soundproof library. In this inner sanctuary, we are not escaping reality. We are creating the ideal conditions to study it with unparalleled clarity. The hindrances that normally cloud our perception, the pull of desire, the sting of ill will, the fogginess of sleepiness, the agitation of restlessness, and the paralysis of doubt are temporarily stilled. In this profound quietude, the mind's natural luminosity shines forth. The benefits of cultivating such a state are immense. On the most basic level, it is deeply healing and restorative. The mind, finally freed from its relentless internal chatter, can experience a profound rest, a peace that is far more restorative than sleep. In this stillness, deep-seated emotional knots can begin to unravel, and the body and mind are bathed in a sense of well-being. Furthermore, the ability to unify the mind is a practical skill that enhances every aspect of our lives, bringing focus, calm, and efficiency to any task we undertake. But its greatest benefit, its ultimate purpose on the path, is that it creates the perfect laboratory for insight. Imagine a large glass jar filled with water and a thick layer of mud at the bottom. If you shake the jar vigorously, the mud swirls and mixes with the water, making it completely opaque. You cannot see through it at all. This is the ordinary, untrained mind, constantly shaken by the five hindrances, murky with agitation and delusion. You cannot see the nature of your own mind when it is in this state. The practice of right concentration is the act of gently placing the jar on a steady surface and allowing it to be completely still. No more shaking, no more stirring. As you wait with patient mindfulness, something miraculous happens. Slowly, particle by particle, the mud begins to settle. The water at the top becomes clearer, then the middle, and finally, the entire jar of water becomes crystal clear. The mud is still there at the bottom, but it is no longer obscuring the vision. Now you can see through the water with perfect clarity. You can see its nature. Our mind is this jar of water. Samadhi is the practice of letting the mud of the hindrances settle. As they do, the mind's natural, inherent clarity is revealed, and the light of wisdom, panya, can shine through, illuminating the truths of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self, not as theories, but as direct, observable realities. As this state of concentration deepens, the meditator can begin to experience a series of profound and blissful states of absorption, known as the jhanas. These are not mystical, otherworldly experiences, but natural potentials of a purified and unified human consciousness. They are characterized by the arising of powerful, wholesome factors, such as piti, which is a rapturous, energetic joy, and sukha, a deep, pervasive sense of blissful contentment. In the initial stages of jhana, this blissful energy can be quite vibrant. As concentration becomes even more refined, the energetic joy subsides, leaving an all-pervading sense of serene bliss. In the deepest states, even this profound bliss is transcended, giving way to a state of perfect, unshakable equanimity, upekkha, a peace that lies beyond the duality of pleasure and pain. These states are not the final goal of the path, but they are powerful and pleasant resting places, providing the mind with strength and joy, and creating the ultimate stable platform from which the final, liberating insights can arise. Right concentration is the beautiful culmination of the entire Eightfold Path, bringing all the preceding 7 factors to a unified point of power. When a mind that is grounded in the ethics of right action and right speech, motivated by the compassion of right intention, energized by the balance of right effort, and guided by the clarity of right mindfulness, finally comes to rest in the unshakable stillness of right concentration, it becomes an instrument capable of penetrating the most subtle layers of reality. It is the sharpened point of the arrow of wisdom that can sever the final bonds of ignorance. Having now surveyed the complete architecture of this noble path, having assembled our vessel and understood its components, we are fully equipped. Our task now is to learn how to skillfully navigate this vessel through the treacherous and often confusing waters of our actual human lives, beginning with the challenge of freeing ourselves from the heavy anchor of the past, with a mind trained in ethics, steadied by concentration, and illuminated by mindfulness. We are now equipped to turn our attention to the great burdens of the heart. We possess the tools not just to understand our suffering, but to actively dismantle it. And the first and heaviest of these burdens, for so many of us, is the past. We walk through the landscape of the present moment carrying a heavy backpack filled with the stones of past events. There are the sharp stones of regret over our mistakes, the heavy rocks of resentment for hurts we have suffered, the polished gems of nostalgia for happy times that are now gone. We carry these ghosts with us, allowing them to whisper in our ear, to color our perception, and to rob the present of its vitality. The art of letting go begins with learning how to set this backpack down. The first and most liberating insight is this: the past does not exist. The event that you are replaying in your mind right now, the argument, the failure, the loss is over. It is gone. It has absolutely no power to harm you in this moment. The only place the past has any life is within the confines of your own mind, as a thought, an image, or a memory that is arising right now. Therefore, your suffering does not come from the past event itself. It comes from your present moment relationship with the memory of it. It is the compulsive, habitual act of clinging to the memory, reopening the wound, and re-experiencing the pain in the present that is the true source of your bondage. Realizing this is profoundly empowering. We cannot change what happened yesterday, but we have the absolute power to change our relationship to it today. This does not mean we should ignore the past or pretend it didn't happen. There is a crucial difference between learning from the past and being imprisoned by it. To reflect on a past mistake with the intention of understanding its causes and ensuring we do not repeat it is wisdom. This is skillful reflection. To ruminate on it, however, is to be stuck. Rumination is the obsessive, judgmental replaying of the event, circling the same ground over and over, criticizing ourselves, blaming others, and deepening the rut of our pain without gaining any new insight or freedom. It is the difference between a scientist studying an old experiment to learn from it, and a prisoner staring endlessly at the four walls of their cell. The practice is to extract the lesson, to take the wisdom forward with us, and then to let the story itself go. So how do we do this? We use the gentle and powerful tools of mindfulness. When a painful memory or a difficult emotion connected to the past arises, our habitual tendency is to either push it away in aversion or to cling to it and get lost in its story. Mindfulness offers a third way, a middle path of wise acceptance. The first step is to simply allow the memory or feeling to be there, without resistance. We can say to ourselves, "Ah, here is the memory of that difficult time." Or, "I see that the feeling of regret is present in me right now." We acknowledge its presence with a kind and welcoming attitude. The second step is to gently name it: sadness, anger, shame. This simple act of labeling creates a space between our awareness and the emotion itself. We see that we are not the sadness. We are the one who is aware of sadness. This depersonalizes the experience and lessens its power over us. The third step is to observe it with compassionate curiosity. We watch the memory and its associated feelings as we would watch clouds passing in the sky. We notice their nature. They arise. They stay for a while. And if we do not feed them with more thought, they will eventually change and pass away. We can bring our attention to where the emotion lives in our body, a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, and breathe into that physical sensation. Not to make it go away, but simply to hold it in a kind, spacious awareness. A vital part of this healing process is the practice of forgiveness. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood spiritual concepts. To forgive another person is not to condone their harmful actions, or to say that what they did was okay. It is not even necessarily about reconciling with them. Forgiveness is an act of profound self-love. It is the recognition that holding on to resentment, bitterness, and the desire for revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The only person being harmed by the poison of our resentment is us. Forgiveness is the courageous act of setting ourselves free. It is the moment we decide to cut the energetic cord that binds us to the person who hurt us, allowing us to walk into our future without being chained to the pain of our past. Equally important, and often more difficult, is the practice of forgiving ourselves. We are all imperfect human beings, capable of making mistakes and causing harm. To be trapped in a cycle of self-blame and guilt for past actions is a cruel form of imprisonment. Self-forgiveness involves acknowledging the harm we caused, learning the lesson with all our heart, making amends wherever possible, and then, with great compassion, releasing ourselves from the burden of our own perfectionism. It is about treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend who has made a mistake. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this entire practice. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey that required them to cross a river. When they arrived at the bank, they saw a young woman in fine clothes, hesitating to cross for fear of ruining her dress in the muddy water. The monks' vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. The junior monk, rigid in his observance, walked past her without a word. The senior monk, however, saw her distress. He walked over to her, and without a word, he lifted her into his arms, carried her across the swirling river, and gently set her down on the other side. He then bowed and continued on his way. For the next several hours of their silent journey, the junior monk was seething. His mind was a storm of criticism and judgment. Finally, he could contain himself no longer and burst out. "How could you do that? You are a monk. You know our vows forbid us to touch a woman." It was a terrible violation. What will people think? The senior monk listened patiently until the tirade was over. Then he looked at his younger companion with a gentle smile and said, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This question echoes through the chambers of our own hearts. How many old hurts, old regrets, old arguments, and old selves are we still carrying? Long after the events have passed, each one is a heavy stone in our backpack. The practice of letting go is the practice of stopping, looking at what we are carrying, and choosing, one by one, to put the stones down. The past is a teacher, not a jailer. By learning its lessons and releasing its grip, we liberate our energy and our attention to be fully present for the gift of this moment, which is the only place life ever truly is. As we unburden ourselves from the weight of what has been, our minds often swing to the other extreme, replacing the ghosts of the past with the phantoms of the future. Our next task is to learn how to face this new challenge with the same mindful courage. Having gently set down the heavy backpack of the past, we experience a profound sense of lightness and relief. But the restless mind, long accustomed to carrying a burden, often rushes to pick up a new one. It ceases to look in the rearview mirror only to stare anxiously through the windshield at the dense, impenetrable fog of the future. We trade the ghosts of regret for the phantoms of anxiety. This constant leaning into what is yet to come, this state of quiet, chronic worry, is a form of self-imposed exile. We are living in a land of what if, and in doing so, we forfeit our citizenship in the only land that is real, the land of what is built. The root of all anxiety is the desire to control what is fundamentally uncontrollable. The future, by its very nature, is uncertain, and our mind rebels against this truth. It operates under the deeply flawed assumption that if we worry enough, if we mentally rehearse every possible negative outcome, we can somehow prevent disaster and force reality to conform to our wishes. This is a painful illusion. Worrying does not change the future. It only poisons the present. It gives us the false sensation of being productive, while in reality, it is a hamster wheel of fear, spinning endlessly, draining our energy, and leading us nowhere. We suffer 1,000 imaginary tragedies in our mind, paying the emotional price for disasters that almost never come to pass. The first step toward peace is a radical one. It is to accept, with our whole being, the profound truth of impermanence. It is to make peace with uncertainty itself. The future is unknowable precisely because life is a dynamic, flowing, and ever-changing process. To accept this is not a passive resignation or a mark of weakness. It is an act of supreme courage and wisdom. It is the moment we stop fighting a battle we can never win, the battle against reality itself. When we cease demanding certainty from an uncertain universe, a great inner tension is released, and a space for peace begins to open. It is vital, however, to distinguish between useless, neurotic worrying and wise, skillful planning. Wise planning is a present moment activity. It is calm, rational, and grounded. It involves looking clearly at a situation, identifying the concrete steps we can take right now to prepare for a likely future, and then taking those steps with diligence. A student plans for an exam by studying consistently. A farmer plans for the winter by harvesting his crops. Once the skillful action has been taken in the present, the wise planner lets go of the outcome, understanding that their control is limited. Useless worrying, on the other hand, is an entirely future-oriented mental state. It is emotional, repetitive, and often irrational. It is the student obsessing over 100 ways they might fail the exam. Instead of studying, it is the farmer losing sleep over the possibility of a freak snowstorm, a possibility they cannot control. Planning is the ship's captain carefully checking the maps and supplies before the voyage. Worrying is that same captain locked in his cabin, imagining all the icebergs and rogue waves he might encounter, lost in a terrifying fantasy that does nothing to ensure the safety of his ship. So, when the storms of anxiety begin to gather in the mind, what is the practice? We do not fight the storm, nor do we let it capsize our vessel. We drop anchor into the firm, solid ground of the present moment. The first step is to recognize the weather pattern. The moment you notice your mind spinning its what-if stories, you can gently label it. This is worrying. This is anxiety. This simple act of recognition creates a space. It is the first step out of the trance of fear. The second step is to immediately bring your attention out of the abstract world of future thoughts and into the tangible reality of your body. Feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Notice the sensation of the air on your skin. Anxiety is a ghost, and it cannot survive in the bright light of physical sensation. The third and most powerful step is to anchor in the breath. Your anxious thoughts may be screaming about a catastrophe next week, but in the reality of this one breath, you are safe. Follow the entire duration of a single in-breath. Feel it enter your body, then follow the entire duration of a single out-breath. Feel it leave. This simple, conscious breath is a powerful message to your nervous system that there is no immediate threat. The present moment becomes your sanctuary, your storm shelter. The winds of worry may howl outside, but within the shelter of this breath, you are secure. There is an old parable about a man who was so consumed by anxiety that he decided the world was too dangerous a place to live in. He was afraid of being struck by lightning, so he never went out in the rain. He was afraid of being in an accident, so he never traveled. He was afraid of being robbed, so he put bars on his windows and triple-bolted his door. He was afraid of catching a disease, so he refused to see any visitors. In his desperate attempt to protect himself from all the potential dangers of life, he created a prison of his own fear. He was perfectly safe from lightning, accidents, and robbers, but he was completely cut off from the sunlight, from friendship, from joy, from life itself. Ultimately, he perished from loneliness and starvation inside the very fortress he had built for his own protection. The moral is clear. A life lived in constant fear of what might happen is not a life at all. The suffering caused by our worry is often far more certain and debilitating than the events we are actually worrying about. You cannot control the weather of tomorrow. You cannot know if the seas will be calm or rough, but you do not have to be a victim of your fearful thoughts about it. You can learn to be a skillful sailor by courageously accepting the inherent uncertainty of life, by distinguishing between wise preparation and useless worry, and by diligently practicing the art of anchoring yourself in the safe harbor of the present moment. You discover a peace that is not dependent on a predictable future. It is the deep, resilient peace that comes from trusting in your own ability to meet whatever comes, with the unwavering presence and the inner resources you have cultivated. Having now addressed the great inner burdens of the past and the future, our path now leads us to apply this hard-won clarity to the most dynamic, challenging, and rewarding aspect of our present moment experience, our relationships with other people. Having brought our awareness home from the distant lands of the past and the future, we arrive in the vibrant, dynamic, and often challenging territory of the present moment. And what defines our present more than our relationships with others? It is easy to feel peaceful while meditating alone in a quiet room. But the true test of our practice comes when we step into the complex, unpredictable field of human interaction. Our relationships with our partners, our children, our colleagues, and even strangers are the living laboratories where our wisdom and compassion are forged. They are perfect mirrors, reflecting back to us our attachments, our fears, and our deepest insecurities with unflinching clarity. To navigate this sacred ground, the Buddha offered a supreme toolkit, 4 boundless qualities of the heart, known as the Brahma Viharas, or the 4 immeasurables. These are the 4 faces of authentic love. The first of these is metta, or loving kindness. This is the foundation. Metta is not the sentimental, preferential love of popular songs. It is a boundless, unconditional, and radiant goodwill. It is the simple, powerful, and steady wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and well. The practice of metta often begins with ourselves, for we cannot offer to others what we do not possess. We learn to hold our own being with kindness, whispering to our own heart, "May I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from harm." From this foundation of self-compassion, we then extend this benevolent wish outwards, in expanding circles, first to a loved one, then to a neutral person, then, in a courageous act of spiritual maturity, to a person with whom we have difficulty. Finally, we radiate it out to encompass all living beings in all directions. This practice systematically dismantles the walls our ego builds between us and them, revealing our shared, fundamental desire for happiness. It is the universal antidote to the poison of anger, irritation, and ill will. Flowing naturally from metta is the second immeasurable quality, karuna, or compassion. If loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the heartfelt wish for them to be free from suffering. The ancient texts describe karuna as the trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing pain. It is what moves metta into the realm of action. It is essential to distinguish true compassion from pity. Pity looks down from a place of superiority, creating distance. Compassion meets another being at eye level, recognizing our shared vulnerability to pain, aging, sickness, and loss. One of the most powerful practices of compassion is deep listening. It is the ability to offer another person our full, silent, and non-judgmental presence, listening not just to their words, but to the suffering behind their words. We listen not with the intent to reply, to fix, or to offer advice, but simply to understand. This gift of presence can be more healing than any words we could ever say. The third quality is mudita, or sympathetic joy. This is often considered the most challenging of the 4, for it is the direct antidote to the deeply ingrained habits of envy and comparison. Mudita is the ability to feel genuine, selfless joy in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. Our ego-conditioned mind often reacts to another's success with a sense of lack, thinking, "Why them and not me?" This creates a subtle but painful feeling of separation. The practice of mudita is to consciously rejoice in another's happiness, as if it were our own. When a friend gets a promotion, when we see a family laughing together in the park, when we hear of another's good fortune, we can pause and intentionally allow a feeling of joy to arise for them. This practice dissolves the competitive nature of the ego and opens the heart to a sense of shared abundance and celebration. It is the understanding that happiness is not a limited resource. The pinnacle of these four sublime states is the fourth immeasurable, upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is the vast, is spacious, and unshakable balance of the heart. It is born from wisdom, from the deep understanding that all beings are the owners of their own karma, the heirs to their own actions. We cannot control their choices or shield them from all of life's difficulties. Equanimity is not cold indifference or detached aloofness. It is a vast, warm, and all-embracing love that is free from the anxieties of attachment. It is the wisdom that allows us to love someone completely while giving them the freedom to walk their own path. It is the stability that allows us to offer our kindness, our compassion, and our joy without becoming overwhelmed or losing our own center in the turbulent dramas of other people's lives. It is the peaceful heart that can say, "I wish you happiness and freedom from suffering, and I will help you in any way I can. But your ultimate journey is your own." The power of this wisdom to resolve conflict is beautifully illustrated in a story from the Buddha's life. The Sakyas, the Buddha's own clan, and the neighboring Kolyas were on the verge of a bloody war. A severe drought had lowered the water level of the Rohini River that served as their common border, and they were bitterly disputing the remaining water rights. Tempers flared, armies were amassed, and a battle seemed imminent. Seeing the impending catastrophe, the Buddha walked alone and stood directly between the two armed camps. He did not take sides or offer a solution. Instead, he began to ask questions. "Tell me, O kings and warriors," he said, "what is it you are fighting over?" "We are fighting over the water," they replied. "And tell me," the Buddha continued, "what is the value of this water?" They considered for a moment. "Compared to our other riches, the water has very little value." The Buddha then asked his final, penetrating question. "And what, O kings, is the value of the blood of your people?" A great silence fell over the battlefield. "The blood of our people," they answered softly, "is priceless." The Buddha looked at them with immense compassion. "Is it then wise," he asked, "to be willing to destroy that which is priceless for the sake of that which has very little value?" Ashamed and awakened by this simple, profound appeal to their own wisdom, the two sides laid down their weapons and began to work together on a peaceful resolution. This is the power of wisdom in relationships. Most of our conflicts arise from the ego, from the need to be right, from a feeling of being personally attacked. By applying the wisdom of not self, anatta, we begin to take things less personally. We see that the other person, like us, is a complex process of changing thoughts and feelings, driven by their own history and their own suffering. When we bring the four immeasurables into this understanding, our relationships transform from battlegrounds of the ego into gardens for the cultivation of love. But perhaps the most challenging relationship of all is the one we have with our own difficult inner states. Our next step is to turn this compassionate awareness inward, to face the fire of anger itself. Of all the emotions that surge through the human heart, few are as powerful, as consuming, and as potentially destructive as anger. It arrives like a flash fire, burning away our reason, scorching our good intentions, and leaving behind a trail of regret and broken connections. Our conventional responses to this powerful energy are often unskilled. We either try to suppress it, pushing it down into the dark basement of our consciousness, where it festers and turns into resentment or depression, or we identify with it completely, becoming its mindless agent and unleashing its destructive force on those around us. The Zen path offers a third way, a middle path of profound wisdom and skill. It teaches us not to fight the fire, nor to become the fire, but to become the calm, spacious awareness that can hold the fire, understand its nature, and transform its raw energy into wisdom. This is the art of Howajai, of resolving and liberating the energy of anger. The practice begins the moment you feel the first spark. It may be a tightening in the jaw, a flash of heat in the face, a clenching in the fists. This is the critical moment. The first step is not to act, not to speak, but to practice what is called stopping. You consciously stop the momentum of the reaction. This can be as simple as taking one single, deep, conscious breath. This breath is a sacred pause, a circuit breaker that interrupts the instantaneous leap from stimulus to reaction. In this precious pause, you create a space, and in that space, you have a choice. You are no longer a puppet of your anger. You are becoming its mindful observer. The second step is to bring your awareness out of the swirling, repetitive story in your head, the story of who is to blame and how you have been wronged, and into the direct, physical sensations of the anger in your body. Where do you feel it? Is it a burning in your chest, a churning in your stomach, a pulsing in your temples? Anchor your attention in these raw, physical energies. Do not judge them or wish them away. Simply observe them with a steady, curious attention. You are not the anger. You are the one who feels heat in the chest. You are the one who feels a knot in the stomach. This shift from the mental story to the physical sensation is crucial. It grounds you in the present reality and begins to strip the anger of its narrative power. As you hold these sensations in your awareness, you continue to breathe into the areas of tightness and heat, not to force them to dissolve, but as if to create more space around them, to hold them with a gentle, non-judgmental care. Imagine you are holding a small, crying baby. The baby is your anger. You would not shout at the baby or shake it. You would not try to ignore it or lock it in another room. You would pick it up gently, hold it securely, and listen to its cries to understand what it needs. We must learn to treat our own anger with this same tender, compassionate attention. We cradle our anger with our mindfulness. We acknowledge its presence. I see you. Anger, I know you are here. I will take care of you. This radical act of kindness toward our own difficult emotion is what begins the process of transformation. Anger, when it is seen, heard, and held without judgment, begins to lose its violent charge. Once the initial intensity has subsided, we can move to a deeper practice of investigation. We can ask our anger, what is beneath you? What is the more vulnerable feeling you are trying to protect? Very often, anger is a secondary emotion, a protective shield for something more tender. It can be a mask for deep hurt, a response to feeling unseen, disrespected, or unheard. It can be a defense against a profound sense of fear or helplessness. By looking deeply with compassion, we can begin to touch this softer, more primary wound. When we can say to ourselves, I am not just angry, I am deeply hurt. the entire emotional landscape shifts. We move from a place of hard defensiveness to one of soft vulnerability, and it is in this vulnerable space that true healing can occur. Furthermore, we can use our wisdom to investigate the object of our anger. We can reflect on the person whose words or actions triggered our response. We can use our understanding of dukkha to see that this person, too, is suffering. Their harmful actions likely spring from their own pain, their own ignorance, their own unskillfully handled anger. They are not a solid, evil entity, but a complex being caught in their own web of causes and conditions. To see the suffering in the person who has made us suffer is an act of profound wisdom. It does not excuse their behavior, but it depersonalizes the hurt. It is no longer an attack on me, but rather the unfortunate spilling over of another person's pain. This insight can be the key that unlocks the door from resentment to compassion. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that perfectly illustrates this principle of non-reaction. A man from a high-caste Brahmin family, hearing of the Buddha's teachings, which challenged the caste system, came to him filled with rage. He stood before the Buddha and unleashed a torrent of the most vile and abusive insults imaginable. The Buddha did not react. He simply stood in silence, with a calm and peaceful presence, until the man had exhausted himself. When the man finally fell silent, the Buddha asked him a question. "My friend," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone and you go to offer it, but that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The Brahmin was taken aback by the unexpected question. "Well," he stammered, "if they do not accept it, then it still belongs to me." Of course, the Buddha smiled gently. "Exactly so, my friend," he said. "Today, you have come and offered me the gift of your insults and your anger. I have chosen not to accept it." The man was thunderstruck. He had come with a sword of hatred, and it had met nothing but empty space. This encounter completely transformed him, and he became a devoted follower. This story teaches us a profound truth. Another person's anger only has power over us if we choose to accept the gift. If we react with our own anger, we have accepted it, and now the poison belongs to both of us. But if we can remain in a state of mindful, non-reactive presence, the gift of their anger remains with them. This is not a passive stance, but an act of immense inner strength. The path teaches us that hatred is never appeased by hatred. By love and non-hatred alone is it ever healed. This is not a sentimental platitude. It is a psychological law. To meet anger with anger is to pour gasoline on a fire. To meet anger with the cool water of a calm, compassionate, and non-reactive mind is the only way to extinguish the flames. Transforming our relationship with anger is not an overnight process. It is a skill, cultivated over time, through patient and repeated practice. Each time we feel the spark of irritation and meet it with a single conscious breath, we are strengthening a new habit. Each time we hold our anger with kindness instead of acting it out, we are rewiring our brain for peace. We learn that anger is simply energy by itself. It is not good or bad when it is allowed to run wild with delusion. It is incredibly destructive, but when its raw energy is held in the spacious container of mindfulness and compassion, it can be transformed into the energy of wisdom, clarity, and the courageous will to create a better world. As we become more skilled at meeting our anger with this gentle awareness, we may begin to notice that the harshness we so often direct at others is just a reflection of an even more persistent harshness, the one we direct toward ourselves. This brings us to the vital practice of cultivating a true and unconditional friendship with our own heart. As we journey deeper into the landscape of the heart, we learn to meet the fiery energy of anger with a cool and spacious awareness. Yet, in this process, many of us discover a startling truth. The harshness we sometimes direct towards others is but a faint echo of the relentless, critical voice we reserve for ourselves. We live with a constant inner critic who judges our every mistake, magnifies our every flaw, and compares us unfavorably to others. We would never speak to a friend the way we often speak to ourselves in the silence of our own minds. This is why the path of compassion must inevitably and essentially turn inward. We must learn to become our own best friend. This is the practice of self-compassion, and it is the necessary foundation for all true and lasting peace. Self-compassion is frequently misunderstood. It is not self-pity. Self-pity is a passive and isolating state of poor me, where we become lost in the drama of our own suffering. Self-compassion is an active and empowering response. It sees the suffering and asks, "What can I do to help? How can I soothe and care for myself in this moment?" Self-compassion is also not self-indulgence. It is not an excuse to avoid challenges or wallow in unhealthy habits. In fact, true self-compassion often gives us the strength to do what is difficult, to apologize, to exercise, to end a harmful relationship because we know it is for our long-term well-being. And finally, self-compassion is not the same as self-esteem. Self-esteem is often conditional, based on our successes and achievements. It can be a roller coaster, high when we win and plummeting when we fail. Self-compassion is unconditional. It is a steady source of inner worth that is present not only when we succeed, but most especially when we fail. It is the unwavering kindness that remains when everything else falls away. This transformative quality of the heart can be understood through three core components. The first is self-kindness. This is the direct antidote to our harsh inner critic. It is the conscious choice to treat ourselves with the same warmth, understanding, and encouragement that we would offer to a dear friend who is struggling. When you make a mistake, instead of the familiar inner tirade of, "How could you be so stupid?" the voice of self-kindness says, "That was a difficult situation, and you did the best you could. It's okay to be imperfect." It is a radical shift from self-judgment to self-support. The second component is the recognition of our common humanity. So often, when we fail or feel inadequate, a profound sense of isolation sets in. We feel as though we are the only one who is this flawed, this broken. The wisdom of common humanity is the comforting and realistic understanding that suffering and imperfection are not personal failings. They are an inescapable part of the shared human experience. To be human is to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to feel pain. The moment we recognize this, our suffering ceases to be a wall that separates us from others and becomes a bridge of connection. The thought shifts from, "Why am I the only one struggling?" to, "This is what it feels like when a human being struggles, just like millions of others before me and alongside me." This insight is the antidote to shame and isolation. The third component, and the foundation that makes the other two possible, is mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to hold our own pain in a balanced and spacious awareness. Without mindfulness, we can easily get swept away by our negative emotions, becoming completely identified with them. This is the state of over-identification, which fuels self-pity. We aren't just feeling pain, we are the pain. Mindfulness allows us to take a step back and observe our thoughts and feelings without being consumed by them. We can acknowledge, there is a feeling of intense disappointment here, or the inner critic is very loud right now. This clear seeing creates the space necessary to then respond with self-kindness and to remember our common humanity. To cultivate these qualities, we can engage in simple yet profound practices. When you are suffering, you can try placing a hand gently over your heart, feeling the warmth and pressure. This simple physical gesture can be deeply soothing, signaling to our nervous system that we are safe and cared for. We can also practice speaking to ourselves with kind and supportive language. Ask yourself, if my best friend were feeling this way, what would I say to them then? Turn those words of comfort and encouragement inward. You might even develop a personal mantra to use in difficult times. Something like, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself and give myself the compassion I need." There is a poignant story from the Buddha's life that speaks to the heart of this practice. While touring a monastery with his attendant, Ananda, the Buddha came upon a monk named Putigata who was gravely ill with a painful skin disease. His body was covered in oozing sores. His robes were soiled, and he had been left utterly alone. As the other monks were repulsed by his condition, the Buddha, seeing this, did not turn away. He immediately went to the fireplace and began to boil water. With Ananda's help, he gently and patiently washed the sick monk's body, cleaned his sores, and gave him a fresh set of robes. After he had made the monk comfortable, the Buddha gathered the other monks and taught them a powerful lesson. You have no mother or father here to look after you. If you do not care for one another, who will know this? Whoever nurses the sick and the afflicted nurses me. This story is a beautiful teaching on compassion for others. But we can also see it as a powerful metaphor for self-compassion. Within each of us, there is a sick monk. It is the part of us that feels broken, wounded, ashamed, or inadequate. It is the part of ourselves we try to hide, the part we are repulsed by and wish would just go away. The practice of self-compassion is the courageous act of turning toward this abandoned part of ourselves. It is the commitment to no longer leave ourselves alone in our suffering. We become our own caregiver. With the warm water of our kindness, we gently wash our own wounds. With the clean robes of our mindfulness, we clothe ourselves in acceptance. We make a vow to ourselves, I will not abandon you. I will care for you. This is not a selfish act. In fact, it is the most generous foundation for a compassionate life. When we stop looking to the outside world for the approval and validation that only we can truly give ourselves, a great burden is lifted. We become less needy, less defensive, and more resilient. When our own heart has become a reliable source of warmth, kindness, and refuge, we have an infinite wellspring of compassion to offer others. Having learned to be a true friend to ourselves, we are now equipped with the courage and stability to face one of the most subtle challenges of the path, our deep attachment to the very idea of a self, and the mask we wear to navigate the world. Having cultivated a warm and unconditional friendship with ourselves, we arrive at the door of one of the most profound and liberating explorations on the spiritual path, the investigation of the self itself. From our earliest days, we have engaged in a monumental project, the project of building, maintaining, and defending an identity, a personality, a mask that we present to the world. We call this mask me. We believe it is our face. We have worn it for so long. We have forgotten that it is something we have constructed. The practice now is to gently and with great courage begin to peel back this mask, not to destroy ourselves, but to discover the radiant, spacious freedom that lies beneath it. This is the deepest application of the wisdom of anatta, or not self. We must ask ourselves the radical question, this me that I cherish and protect so fiercely, where is it actually located? We can start by looking at its components. Is this me, my body? But we have seen that the body is an ever-changing process, aging and transforming from moment to moment, composed entirely of non-me elements like air, water, and food. Is this me, my job, or my role in life? I may be a parent, a doctor, a musician, but these are temporary functions. Hats that I wear, they are not the essence of my being. Is this me, my possessions, my house, my car, my clothes? These things are external, and their connection to us is fleeting and fragile. Is it my collection of opinions, beliefs, and memories? But these too are in constant flux. Our opinions change with new information, and our memories are notoriously unreliable, edited and re-edited over time. Perhaps, then, me is my reputation, the way other people see me. But this is the most precarious foundation of all, for it is built on the shifting sands of other people's minds, something we can never truly control. When we investigate in this way, we see that the solid, independent self we believe in is actually a collage, a story, a temporary assemblage of these impermanent, irreliable parts. It is a mental construct, a useful convention for navigating the world, but it has no ultimate, inherent existence. And because this constructed self is so fragile, so dependent on external props for its existence, it lives in a state of constant vulnerability. This vulnerability is the source of the deep-seated fear of criticism and the insatiable craving for praise that governs so much of our lives. When someone praises us, when they admire our mask, we feel a flicker of pleasure and relief. Our fragile identity has been validated and reinforced. We become addicted to this validation. Conversely, when someone criticizes us, when they question our opinion or challenge our self-image, it feels like a threat to our very survival. We become defensive, angry, and hurt because we mistake an attack on our mask for an attack on our true being. We are trapped on a painful roller coaster, soaring with praise and plummeting with blame, all because of a case of mistaken identity. The practice that liberates us from this prison is a form of mindful unselfing. It begins with learning to observe the constant stream of I to me and mind thoughts that flow through the mind. When the thought arises, I want that new car, instead of being the I who wants, you become the awareness that observes the arising of a wanting thought. When the thought arises, she really hurt me, you observe the arising of a story of being hurt. You are not denying the experience, but you are ceasing to build a solid identity around it. The most powerful arena for this practice is in our direct interactions. When someone offers you praise, instead of immediately identifying with it and thinking I am great, turn your attention inward. Notice the pleasant feeling that arises in the body, the warmth, the sense of expansion. You can simply label it. Ah, a pleasant feeling is here. You enjoy it, but you don't cling to it as proof of your worth. And when someone offers you criticism, you do the same. Instead of defending or attacking, you turn inward and observe the unpleasant feeling, the tightness, the heat, the contraction. You label it. An unpleasant feeling is here. This is what being criticized feels like. By observing the raw feeling without getting lost in the story, you unhook yourself from the reactive cycle. The praise and blame become like the weather, passing clouds in the vast sky of your awareness. Rather than a final verdict on your being, the great Zen poet and hermit Ryokan lived as a perfect embodiment of this freedom. He lived in a simple hut with almost no possessions. One evening, a thief broke in, but was dismayed to find nothing at all to steal. Ryokan, who was sitting in meditation, saw the thief's dejection and was filled with compassion for him. "You have walked a long way to visit me," Ryokan said. "You should not leave empty-handed." He then took off the well-worn robes he was wearing, his only real possession, and insisted the bewildered thief take them. The thief, confused, grabbed the robes and ran off into the night. Ryokan sat naked in the cool air of the open doorway, watching the brilliant moon shining through the pine trees. He then thought to himself, "Poor fellow, I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon." In this simple, profound moment, Ryokan revealed a mind completely free from ego. He had nothing to lose because he clung to nothing. His identity was not attached to his possessions, his dignity, or even his own body. He was so empty of self that his only feeling was one of compassion for the thief, who was still trapped in the world of wanting and possessing, unable to see the far greater treasure of the moon that was freely available to all. Letting go of our attachment to the self is not an act of self-annihilation. We do not become blank, personalityless robots. In fact, the opposite is true. We let go of the rigid, brittle, and defensive mask, so that our more authentic, fluid, and compassionate nature can emerge. When we are no longer spending all of our energy building up and protecting our fragile ego, a tremendous amount of mental energy is liberated. We stop looking at the world through the narrow, self-centered filter of what's in this for me, or how does this make me look. The great paradox is that when we cease our desperate striving to be somebody special, we discover the profound joy and freedom of being nobody in particular. This is not a state of lack, but a state of boundless, a spacious potential, an awareness that can finally, truly connect with the world, with our gaze no longer turned inward on the project of the self. Our senses open up, and we can begin to perceive the astonishing, simple beauty of life itself, finding a quiet and profound joy in the most ordinary of moments. Having journeyed through the vast inner landscapes of memory and anxiety, and having begun to gently loosen the grip of the ego, we arrive not at a final destination, but at our true starting point, the present moment. For so long, our minds have been conditioned to believe that happiness is something to be achieved in the future after we get the promotion, find the perfect partner, or finally fix all our flaws. We live in a state of perpetual striving, always reaching for the next thing, convinced that peace lies just over the horizon. The most profound shift on the spiritual path is the realization that this is a beautiful and tragic mistake. There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It is not a destination to be reached, but a quality of presence to be inhabited. Right here, right now, in the midst of our ordinary, imperfect lives. The practice now shifts from achieving a state to simply experiencing the richness of what is already here. We are invited to discover the miracle of the ordinary. Consider a simple cup of tea. For a mind lost in thought, it is just a mundane beverage, gulped down without notice. But for a mind that is present, that cup of tea becomes a universe. There is the warmth of the cup in your hands, a direct physical sensation grounding you in your body. There is the steam rising in a graceful, impermanent dance. There is the rich color of the liquid, the subtle aroma that fills your senses, and there is the taste itself, a complex meeting of leaf and water on your tongue. To be fully present for the simple act of drinking a cup of tea is to be fully alive. The same is true for a single flower, a beam of sunlight on the floor, the sound of rain against the window. These are not small things. They are everything. They are life itself, offering itself to us in every moment, if only we have the quietness of mind to receive it. A core practice to cultivate this presence is one of exquisite simplicity. Taught by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, the practice of breathing and smiling. It consists of just two phases. Breathing in. You say to yourself, breathing in. I know that I am breathing in. This is not a complex thought. It is a simple recognition, a return to the felt reality of your body. It is an affirmation of your own aliveness in this moment. Then, as you breathe out, you say, breathing out, I smile. This is not a wide, forced grin, but a gentle, subtle, half smile. It is the smile of the Buddha, the smile of Mona Lisa. It is a smile of acceptance, of reconciliation with the present moment, whatever it may hold. This simple physical act has a powerful effect, relaxing hundreds of muscles in your face and sending a signal of peace and contentment throughout your nervous system. This practice is our portable sanctuary. It can be done anywhere, in a traffic jam, waiting in line, in the middle of a difficult meeting. It is a way of constantly, gently returning home to ourselves. Alongside this practice of presence grows the beautiful flower of gratitude. Our minds have a natural negativity bias, a survival-based tendency to scan for what is wrong, what is missing, and what is threatening. Gratitude is the conscious and deliberate counter-practice. It is the training of the mind to notice what is right, what is abundant, and what is a gift. The practice can be as simple as taking a few moments each morning or evening to mentally list 3 or 4 things for which you are genuinely grateful. At first, the mind may draw a blank. So accustomed is it to focusing on problems, but with gentle persistence, we can begin to notice the countless miracles we take for granted. We can cultivate gratitude for the simple fact that we have eyes to see the morning light, ears to hear the voice of a loved one, and legs that can carry us through the day. We can feel gratitude for the roof over our head, the food on our table, the clean water we drink. This practice fundamentally rewires our perspective. It shifts our entire orientation from a feeling of lack and complaint to a feeling of abundance and appreciation. We begin to see that our life, right now, is already overflowing with conditions for happiness. There is a powerful Zen story that captures the essence of finding joy in the present, even in the most extreme circumstances. A monk, fleeing from a ravenous tiger, ran to the edge of a cliff with no other choice. He grabbed onto a thick vine and swung himself down over the precipice. As he hung there, suspended between the tiger, growling above, and the hard ground far below, he looked up and saw, to his horror, another tiger on the ledge at the bottom, looking up at him hungrily. He was trapped. Then, as if his situation couldn't get any worse, he noticed two small mice, one white and one black, emerge from a crevice in the cliff face. They began to gnaw steadily at the very vine he was clinging to. He knew his time was short. In that moment of absolute peril, with his past chasing him and his future threatening him, and time itself eating away at his existence, he happened to glance to the side. There, growing from the cliff face, was a single, beautiful, wild strawberry, glowing red and ripe in the sun. He reached out his free hand, plucked the strawberry, and put it in his mouth. The story ends with a simple line: "How sweet it tasted, this monk." Is each one of us. We are all being chased by the tigers of our past conditioning and our future fears. We are all clinging to the vine of life, which is constantly being gnawed away by the two mice of day and night. In the face of this profound existential precarity, where do we find meaning and joy? The monk shows us the way, even in the face of certain death. He was able to be 100% present for the simple, unadulterated sweetness of one strawberry. This is the culmination of the practice. It is the ability to find the profound beauty and sweetness of life, not by escaping our circumstances, but by being fully present with them. It is the peace that comes from the realization that we don't need to wait for our circumstances to be perfect to be happy. We only need to be present. We have already arrived. We are already home. And the strawberries are all around us, waiting to be tasted, having gathered all these precious insights. Our final task is to weave them into a seamless garment, a way of living that is awake and compassionate in every moment. We have now traveled the full circumference of the Noble Eightfold Path. We began by diagnosing the subtle, pervasive dis-ease of Dukkha. We traced its origins to the thirsty, clinging nature of Tanha. We glimpsed the possibility of freedom in Nirodha, the cessation of this thirst, and we have meticulously explored the eightfold prescription of the path, the Magga, from the wisdom of right view to the profound stillness of right concentration. We have learned to work with the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future, to tend to the garden of our relationships, and to find beauty in the simplicity of the present moment. The final step on this journey is not a step forward, but a step inward. It is the art of integration, of weaving these individual golden threads into the single, seamless garment of a fully awakened life. The ultimate goal is not to become a good meditator, but to become a free and compassionate human being. There is no longer a separation between practice time and the rest of my life. Life itself becomes the practice. This means that our meditation cushion is everywhere. Our monastery is the world, a traffic jam, which once was a source of intense frustration and anger, now becomes an unexpected, gifted moment of stillness. It is a chance to turn off the radio, to feel the breath in the body, and to practice patience, sending thoughts of goodwill to the other drivers who are also stuck, A difficult meeting at work, which once felt like a battle to be won, is transformed into a practice ground for deep listening, for right speech, and for seeing the stress and pressure that may be driving a colleague's harsh words. A sudden illness is no longer a personal catastrophe, but a powerful, visceral teacher of impermanence, a direct lesson in the fragility of the body, and a profound opportunity to offer ourselves the same gentle, unconditional care we have learned to cultivate, even the most mundane. Repetitive chores, washing the dishes, folding laundry, sweeping the floor are no longer obstacles to be rushed through on the way to more interesting things. They become opportunities for profound mindfulness, for being fully present with the sensation of warm water on our hands, the simple texture of cloth, the rhythmic motion of a broom. We learn to discover the sacred in the ordinary, the teacher in every challenge, and the path in every single step. On this journey, we quickly learn that trying to walk it entirely alone is not only difficult, but it goes against the very spirit of the path. The Buddha emphasized the importance of the three jewels, or the three refuges: the Buddha, the awakened one, the Dharma, the path and its teachings, and the Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners. In our modern lives, Sangha may not mean a community of monks and nuns, but a circle of spiritual friends. These are the trusted friends on the path who walk alongside us, who understand our aspirations, and who can offer support and clarity when we stumble. It is a profound gift to have someone you can speak with honestly about your struggles in meditation or your challenges in practicing compassion. An old proverb says that if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. The spiritual path is a marathon, not a sprint. A supportive community, a Sangha, provides the encouragement, the shared wisdom, and the joyful companionship that allows us to walk far. As we walk this path together, it is essential to hold our own practice with a heart of patience and profound self-compassion. In our culture of instant gratification, we can sometimes bring a consumerist mindset to our spiritual life, expecting quick results and becoming discouraged when enlightenment doesn't arrive after a few weeks of meditation. We must remember the lesson of the tortoise. The path unfolds at its own pace. There will be periods of great insight and joyful progress, and there will be periods where we feel stuck, dry, and uninspired. There will be days when we feel spacious and mindful, and days when we feel completely lost in the fog of our old habits. This is not a sign of failure. This is simply the nature of the path. The practice is to meet all of it, the breakthroughs and the setbacks, with the same steady, non-judgmental awareness. The only failure is to stop practicing. The real victory is in the gentle, persistent commitment to keep showing up, to keep returning to the breath, to keep trying to be a little kinder today than we were yesterday. This lifelong journey gradually dissolves one of the greatest illusions, the idea that freedom means escaping from life. Liberation, or nibbana, is not a ticket to another perfect realm, free from problems. It is not about creating a life where we never feel pain, loss, or difficulty. It is about developing an inner resource of wisdom and peace, so deep and so stable that we can meet all of life's inevitable challenges, the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, with a balanced mind and an open heart. It is the freedom that comes from no longer being at war with reality. It is being free within the beautiful, messy, unpredictable, and precious experience of being human. As we learn to live in this integrated way, we come to embody the wisdom of the Zen saying, "There is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. The path ceases to be a means to a future end. Each moment of the path is the goal. Each mindful breath is an arrival. Each kind word is an expression of enlightenment. Each act of compassion is the fruit of the practice." We can visualize this integrated life through the powerful Zen symbol of the Enso, the hand-drawn circle. It is brushed in a single, fluid, expressive stroke. Sometimes it is perfectly closed, and sometimes it is open. It represents the universe, the void, and the fullness of our true nature. It is a symbol of enlightenment, strength, and elegance, but it is also beautifully, perfectly imperfect, a reflection of the human hand that drew it. The Enso is a portrait of a mind that is complete, whole, and free, yet fully embraces the imperfect, flowing, and transient nature of life. As it is, this is the life of awakening we cultivate. Having walked this path together, from the initial recognition of our suffering, all the way to this vision of an integrated, mindful life. We can now pause. Let us take a moment to look back over the entire journey, to distill its most essential lessons, and to gather the courage and inspiration needed to truly live this path. Each and every day, our journey together began in the quiet shadows of our own hearts, with the courage to turn and face the subtle, universal truth of our own disease. We walked a path of discovery, tracing the roots of our suffering not to a flawed world, but to the clinging and craving of our own minds. We saw that if the cause of suffering lies within, so too does its cessation. We then uncovered the great blueprint for freedom, the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical and compassionate guide for living. We have learned how to apply its wisdom to release the burdens of the past and the anxieties of the future, to navigate our relationships with kindness, and to befriend our own hearts with a radical self-compassion. This journey has been a fundamental shift in perspective, a movement from being a passive victim of life's turbulent waters to becoming the calm, skillful sailor of our own vessel. If there is one essential truth to carry forward from our time together, let it be this: peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of mindfulness. The world will continue to turn. Life will always present us with its 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. The waves will never stop coming. The goal of this path is not to calm the storm, for that is beyond our control. It is to find the unshakable stillness within ourselves, the quiet center that can meet any storm with grace and equanimity. We learn that true safety is not an external condition, but an inner capacity, and we come to understand that the act of letting go is not an act of loss or defeat. It is the ultimate act of liberation. The gentle unclenching of a fist we didn't even realize we were holding so tightly, allowing the river of life to flow freely through us once more. You do not need to become someone else to walk this path. You do not need to wait for a perfect moment, a different set of circumstances, or a quiet monastery. The journey begins exactly where you are, in the midst of your beautiful, messy, and imperfect life. It begins with a single, conscious breath. That breath is your anchor. It is your refuge. It is your homecoming. Within you, at this very moment, lies the seed of awakening, the luminous potential for peace, and wisdom that is your birthright. The entire path we have explored is simply the art of learning how to water that seed each day with your gentle attention, your growing compassion, and your unwavering presence. The path is long, but every step is the destination. You have everything you need. Begin now. Just breathe.